Chapter 1475. 1 month later, Xiaochen refined all 2,000 primordial pills, and his cultivation finally returned to its peak. Xiaochen now had 1,000 strands of primordial energy. He already had such a cultivation in the first place. After he refined it again, every strand of primordial energy was like a roaming dragon in the heart of an emperor, already possessing the form of a true dragon. It was no longer like before, when it only had an embryonic form and could not reach such a level. Xiaochen felt that he could no longer cultivate. He could no longer cultivate primordial energy, as if there was an invisible wall blocking it. No matter what, the primordial energy of the outer realm could not advance his primordial energy any further. Xiaochen had already reached the bottleneck of Emperor. Unless he broke through to Prime, he could not advance further. However, the path that Xiaochen took was too special. He could not even be considered Emperor Wu, so how could he break through to Prime? How should he cultivate in the later realms? This was truly frustrating. This was a very awkward realm. Xiaochen was only 35 years old. In the Kunlun realm, he could be considered an outstanding talent at this age. Despite being so young, Xiaochen could no longer cultivate. He clearly still had vast potential to dig out. Unfortunately, Xiaochen already stood at the peak of this abandoned land. There was no other path for him to take. The Purple Emperor's door hovered in the middle of the heart of an emperor. This piqued Xiaochen's interest. He remembered that the Emperor's door contained an incredibly vast energy. Back then, it only opened a small crack, and it allowed Xiaochen to defeat Di Wuk with one punch the instant he jumped off the Emperor's road. Perhaps the mysterious Emperor's door was a direction for Xiaochen to continue advancing his cultivation. Unfortunately, the strands of primordial energy turned into roaming dragons and circled the surroundings. No matter how the primordial energy attacked, it could not shake this Emperor's door at all and could only return empty-handed. Perhaps the only way forward was to seek the answer in that mysterious Blue Dragon Palace. Let's try again. Xiaochen decided to attack that Purple Emperor's door again. Now that Xiaochen had returned to his peak, he might have a chance of pushing open the Emperor's door. With this thought, Xiaochen steeled himself. The strands of primordial energy that looked like true dragons intertwined and intertwined. The 1,000 strands of primordial energy intertwined and twisted together like hemp ropes. The primordial energy took the shape of a huge dragon. The purple dragon scales on its body were clearly visible, looking like a true lightning dragon. The Emperor's door floated in the air, its 2 purple doors tightly shut. In this heart of an emperor, there was silence and suppression. Charge! Xiaochen's heart was filled with heroism. He decisively controlled the primordial energy that was twisted together and charged toward the Emperor's door. With a loud bang, the primordial energy crashed into the Emperor's door and immediately scattered. The entire heart of an emperor turned chaotic and blurry. When the intimidating power rebounded, Xiaochen could not help but vomit a mouthful of blood. When the primal chaos dissipated, Xiaochen looked at the tightly shut Emperor's door and smiled bitterly. It still didn't work. It was just that he did not notice that the originally tough primordial energy had become much softer after seeping into the traces of spiritual liquid. Hard mixed with soft. Hard and soft advanced together. The primordial chaos power invisibly advanced. However, Xiaochen, who was focused on the Emperor's door, did not notice this subtle change. Never mind. Although my cultivation has stagnated, there are still many areas where I can improve. After wiping away the blood at the corner of his lips, Xiaochen shook his head and stopped thinking about this problem. Great Tao energy, the divine lightning eye, the perfection of the flawless saber technique, the comprehension of the Taiji Dao, and so on. There were still many areas where he could improve his strength. Xiaochen had his own priorities. As for which area he should improve, he already had a balance in his heart. The only trump card that he did not expose was the Divine Lightning Eye, a supreme magic skill. By relying on the universe origin Dao fruit, Xiaochen had not only comprehended great Dao energy, but his magic energy had also soared. After Yuanying, there were still nascent soul transformation, void refinement, and great realization. Now, Xiaochen had already broken through soul transformation and reached the void refinement realm. However, Xiaochen would not spend too much time on immortal cultivation. Even immortal venerates were only so-so. There was no need to spend too much time. As long as Xiaochen's magic energy increased, he could easily execute magic skills like the Divine Lightning Eye in Dermic World. After that, Xiaochen spent most of his time on comprehending the Divine Lightning Eye. He had to cultivate it to the third layer and layer on 3 lightning tribulations at the same time. He spent the remaining time on cultivating Great Tao energy, continuing to stabilize his current cultivation. He set aside the Flawless Saber technique, Myriad Heaven Divine Fist, the Taiji Dao, the Fish Dragon Art, and other movement techniques for now. He just needed to familiarize himself with them. Peaceful days passed just like that. Time passed bit by bit. At the foot of the mountain, the Dragon's Gate was being rebuilt. Back then, although the buildings in the city were destroyed, the foundations were still there. The formation lines buried underground were only damaged and not destroyed. The rebuilding proceeded very quickly. In less than 1 month, the outline of the city appeared. With the entire sect working together to rebuild a city, with the help of various factions, a new Heaven Dragon city would appear on Heavenly Star Island in less than 2 months. The sun rose and set. Clouds gathered and dispersed. In the blink of an eye, another month passed. Xiaochen's comprehension ability was astonishing. He had already cultivated the Divine Lightning Eye to the 2nd layer. With a thought, he could layer 2 lightning tribulations in his right eye and send them out. However, he failed to break through to the 3rd layer of the Divine Lightning Eye after several attempts. Magic energy surged in Xiaochen's Sea of Consciousness as he formed hand seals with both hands. Talisman seals flickering with light condensed in his Sea of Consciousness, filling the sky like snow as they entered the 10,000 tribulation Divine Lightning. After Xiaochen formed the final hand seal, the originally dim and motionless 10,000 tribulation Divine Lightning spun quickly, shooting out thousands of electric lights. The 10,000 tribulation Divine Lightning illuminated the entire Sea of Consciousness. Everything in the Sea of Consciousness lost its color before the light of this Divine Lightning, its own light covered. When the immortal epoch's lightning tribulation ancestor released its light, everything lost its color. Xiaochen felt an intense swelling in his right eye. All the electric light condensed into a seed and entered it. The seed was buried in the depths of his right eye. The magic energy in his Sea of Consciousness became its nourishment, quickly draining. When it drained half of the magic energy, the lightning tribulation seed broke out of the ground and bloomed, producing 2 flowers. The black flower had 9 petals that spun quickly in his right eye. Xiaochen's aura soared infinitely. Thunderclouds descended in the sky, looking like one could touch them just by stretching out one's hand. Whoosh! The instant the 2 petals merged, a bolt of electric light appeared 1 kilometer away and exploded space. Horrifying thunder resounded everywhere. If not for Xiaochen suppressing its might, these 2-layered lightning tribulations would have been sufficient to instantly kill an 8th Heaven Martial Emperor, Emperor Wu. Even the Holy Lord would have been severely injured by the explosion, losing his combat prowess. However, it would be hard to say for a prime. It would be hard to deal a fatal blow. Only 3-layered lightning tribulations can seriously injure a prime. Otherwise, a prime would be able to recover from regular injuries in an instant. Xiaochen muttered to himself as he analyzed. Unfortunately, Xiaochen did not comprehend the Thunder Great Tao back then but the Saber Tao. If he comprehended the Thunder Great Tao, with the support of Great Tao energy, the might of the Divine Lightning Eye's 2nd layer would be sufficient to threaten a prime. There was no perfect solution. If Xiaochen had not comprehended the complete Saber Tao, the might of the flawless saber technique would not have been as strong as it was now. Executing the Divine Lightning Eye's 2nd layer is already incredibly easy. Give me another month, and I should be able to execute the Divine Lightning Eye's 3rd layer. Xiaochen closed his eyes and sat down cross-legged to cultivate again. The cultivation of the Divine Lightning Eye was not particularly difficult. After all, this was a supreme magic skill that the Thunder Immortal Ancestor directly imparted to Xiaochen. Furthermore, Shaoqin had the 10,000 tribulation divine lightning, a powerful killing tool. All he needed to do was comprehend it properly and advance step by step. Time passed peacefully for 1 month. On this day, as Shaoqin prepared to make another breakthrough to the divine lightning eye's 3rd layer, at the foot of the mountain, a beautiful figure floated over to this place. Shaoqin revealed a smile on his face as he set aside his plans. Then, he leaped up and landed before the person. Mo Chen, you are here. The person who came was Mo Chen. Normally, she would not disturb Shaoqin. Since she was here, she definitely had something to tell Shaoqin. In 3 months, not only had Shaoqin completely recovered from his injuries, but his complexion was even better than before. Vaguely, Shaoqin already had an invisible aura that rivaled that of the Holy Lord. He was in high spirits and looked very handsome. Mo Chen was entranced by this sight. After she startled to her senses, her pretty face blushed slightly. She smiled and said, "The Dragon's Gate's reconstruction is more or less complete. 3 days from now, we will invite the various holy lands and noble clans of the heavenly starry ocean to a banquet. At that time, Big Brother Shao will have to appear. I came to inform you to make preparations." When Shaoqin heard this, he said softly, "So, it has already been 3 months. It's fine. I will be there on time 3 days from now. In that case, I will take my leave first. I will not disturb Big Brother Zhao's closed-door cultivation." Chapter 1476. Seeing that Mo Chen was about to leave, Shaoqin said, "There is no need to be so distant. After 3 months of closed-door cultivation, I also want to go somewhere. Accompany me." When Mo Chen heard that, she felt somewhat surprised. There are still 3 more days to the Dragon's Gate's re-establishment banquet. Where is Big Brother Shao going? Where to? Starfire City, Bloody Cemetery. There, how unexpected. Big Brother Shao actually wants to go there. That place is not very auspicious. What, you don't have time? Shaoqin asked upon seeing Mo Chen's hesitation. No, I have time. Are we leaving now? Mo Chen said with a smile, startled to her senses. Even if she did not have time, she had to squeeze some time out. Yes. With a wave of Shaoqin's hand, 2 mutated flood dragons pulled the cycle war chariot and descended from the sky. Shaoqin boarded the chariot first, then made an inviting gesture. Mo Chen smiled. She felt somewhat happy at Shaoqin's actions. After the 2 entered the chariot, it instantly soared into the clouds and arrived at the transportation formation on Heavenly Star Island. This trip to the Kunlun continent would take 3 days. Flying alone would not be enough. Shaoqin needed to be transported to the Tianwu Domain's central province first. From there, he could rush to Meteor Trail City. That way, 3 days would be sufficient. Big Brother Shao, why do you want to go to the Bloody Cemetery? That place, Mo Chen asked timidly in the carriage. She had been to that place once. The sky was filled with the blood crows of Shaoqin's sins. There was also the graveyard, and all of the tombstones had Shaoqin's name written in blood. From the moment Shaoqin took off his mask and drew his lunar shadow saber, the knot in his heart was mostly resolved. At this moment, it was enough for him to face it calmly. He said softly, "It's all right. Running away isn't a solution. The past is the past. No matter how much I regret it, it's useless. I just want to take one last look and see if I can eliminate all the sins in the sky." Now that the knot in his heart had been resolved, he had to think of a way to get rid of the sin that filled the sky. Otherwise, if he kept it around, it would be hard to avoid trouble. The origins of his sins were very strange. He had killed countless people, so many that he could not even count them. However, when he thought about it, they were all people who deserved to be killed. They had never killed the innocent, so their sins shouldn't be so great. There was only one explanation, and that was that his sins were left to him by the Qing Emperor. Furthermore, he had a vague feeling that his Emperor's Road 5 years ago was a trap. The appearance of the Scarlet Emperor's Road was not a coincidence. Perhaps there were other mysteries. Of course, all of this was just a guess, and there was no substantial evidence. We're here. Half a day later, Meteor Trail City came into view. The scarlet clouds in the sky were already right before their eyes. Xiaochen gently waved his sleeves, and the cycle war chariot turned into a throne and entered his white clothes. The two of them slowly descended from the sky and stood in the ruins of the city gate. Looking at the ruined Meteor Trail City under the dim light, the two of them felt emotional. The scenes from 5 years ago appeared in his mind. Even now, it felt like it was just yesterday. That great battle was truly world-shaking. It was fought until the heavens and earth darkened, and the memory of it was still fresh in his mind. He would probably never forget it in his life. The difficulty of every step on the Emperor's Road was deeply engraved in Xiaochen's heart. He would never be able to forget it. When Xiaochen saw the smile on Mo Chen's pretty face vanish, he asked softly with a grave expression, "Are you thinking about the past?" Mo Chen forced a smile and replied, "I'm thinking about many things. I was thinking, if Big Brother Xiao had not jumped off his Emperor's Road because of us, what would the situation be like now? Do you believe in karma?" "What do you mean?" "Karma means that there are no coincidences in the world. There is a reason for everything that happens, a purpose for its existence." Seeing that Mo Chen still did not fully understand, Xiaochen smiled and did not explain further. He simply said, "Actually, in my opinion, the final test of the Emperor's Road is not whether I can clear it or not. It is whether I have the courage to jump off. 5 years later, when I look back, I actually won the gamble." Mo Chen's eyes narrowed slightly, looking like beautiful crescent moons. She smiled and said, "As long as Big Brother Xiao can walk out of the shadow, Mo Chen feels that it is good." Xiaochen felt a warmth in his heart. He looked to the front and said, "Come in and take a walk with me." "All right." Xiaochen was very familiar with the graveyard. For the past 5 years, he would come here every year. Every time he came, the pain in his heart intensified. In the end, he no longer had the courage to get off the cycle war chariot and remove his mask. Now that he was revisiting this place, Xiaochen got off the war chariot, removed his mask, and brought his friends over. The pain was no longer there. It was more of a feeling. What death represented was not destruction but new life. Back then, these people died for him. They did not have any other hope. They only hoped that Xiaochen could step forward and become the true bearer of luck. Xiaochen would lead them to resist the deity Dao Union, to resist the demonic calamity that could descend at any moment. Their new lives rested on Xiaochen. As long as Xiaochen could walk out, these people would gain new lives. If one could not walk out, then death would be destruction, grief, despair, all pain, and all negative emotions. After comprehending the state of cycle, Xiaochen's perspective on the problem was no longer the same as before. He could calmly look at all this. All he needed to do was be grateful and continue walking down this path. Remaining in seclusion and holding on to a knot in his heart was the greatest disrespect to these dead people. Strange? After walking around for a long time, Xiaochen revealed a doubtful expression, feeling very confused. When Mo Chen saw this, she quickly asked, "Big Brother Xiao, what's wrong?" "In the past, when I came here, there would be a large number of blood crows coming after hearing the news. However, this time, aside from the blood clouds in the sky, I did not see any blood crows. The number of blood crows has decreased significantly." Mo Chen did not understand. "What's wrong with that?" "Something is very wrong. Someone is refining these blood crows, absorbing and digesting the sins in my body." Xiaochen frowned slightly as he thought of a bad answer. In the past, some deep abyss blood demon cultivators would come here to refine and absorb the blood crows. However, those people did not harm the source of sin. The more blood crows they killed, the more would recover. However, this time, Xiaochen clearly felt the pressure of sin in the sky weaken. The number of blood crows had decreased. What kind of person was doing this? Xiaochen closed his eyes and spread out his spiritual sense in the scarlet graveyard. Xiaochen searched slowly. In the end, aside from some scattered grave sweepers, there were also blood demons here on experiential training. Xiaochen did not discover anyone worthy of suspicion. Could my senses have been wrong? Xiaochen was not satisfied. He used his spiritual sense to search several more times but found nothing. Then, he personally walked through the entire graveyard. In the end, he still did not discover anything. However, he ran into a few blood demons and dealt with them in passing. When Xiaochen looked up, the thick scarlet clouds in the sky seemed to be dimmer than before. However, the difference was not great, making it hard to judge. Big Brother Xiao, perhaps that person is in the sky. Mo Chen's words startled him out of his reverie. Xiao Chen's eyes lit up as he said, "That's right. The blood clouds in the sky are filled with heavy sin. If one comes into contact with them, one will be plagued with sin. Most people would not go there, so I automatically ignored it. However, if there really is someone who can refine the sin's origin energy, they will not care about this." With a thought, Xiaochen gently pushed off the ground with his feet. Then, he shot out like a sharp arrow and instantly entered the blood clouds. However, there were other mysteries in the blood clouds. It was like there was a cotton-like barrier separating them. No matter how hard Xiaochen tried, he could not break it. Instead, he got plagued by sin, feeling extremely uncomfortable. After a few attempts, Xiaochen's eyes turned scarlet. Black lines appeared on the surface of his eyeballs. That was a sign that the sin had penetrated deep into his body, already infiltrating his mind. It was extremely dangerous. Xiaochen did not dare to linger. He quickly left the blood clouds and landed on the ground. Then, he quickly used his great Tao energy to cut off all the sin in his body. "What's wrong?" Mo Chen asked somewhat worriedly when she saw that something was wrong with Xiaochen. After purging the sin in his body, Xiaochen revealed a smile. "You are right. There is indeed another path above the blood clouds. To think that even I cannot break it easily." Not being able to break it easily did not mean that it could not be broken. It just required some effort. Xiaochen was not afraid of trouble. He only feared that he would not be able to find any clues. Now that he had a clue, he was naturally happy. "Move further away." Xiaochen gestured for Mo Chen to move further away. With a thought, the ring of light that represented great Tao energy appeared behind him. The ring of light condensed into a point and soared into the air. When it reached 10 meters, Xiaochen shouted, "Tao." Xiaochen pointed his finger to the sky, and a saber light, supported by great Tao energy, lit up the dark meteor trail city. The saber light turned into a resplendent beam of light, carrying a boundless saber intent. Whoosh! It shot out and instantly tore a hole in the blood clouds. Chapter 1477. Just listen to me. Will you? The lunar shadow saber appeared. Xiaochen grasped its hilt and faced the prime without any fear. Xiaochen did not draw the lunar shadow saber. If Xiaochen drew the lunar shadow saber, he would be able to block this palm strike. Then, Xiaochen soared into the air like a sharp arrow. With a whoosh, he tore through the scarlet clouds. Chase! The primordial energy that Xiaochen expended was not worth it. Why is this fellow still here? He is like a lingering ghost. In the time it took for a spark to fly, Zhuangzheng had turned his head and formed hand seals. A swastika Buddhist seal burst out from his palm and blocked Xiaochen's saber strike. Dao! The saber strike tore through the air, and the light of destruction flickered as it suddenly appeared behind Zhuangzhenghe. This was a martial technique for killing enemies. However, Zhuangzhenghe had to use it to rush. It was somewhat of a waste. Xiaochen's figure moved like a phantom of flowing light, moving far away amid the Bodhi flowers filling the sky. Interesting. The Dongyue Ghost Emperor knew that he could not detain the current Xiaochen, so he was not willing to fight with Xiaochen, wasting his efforts. The Kitagarbha Bodhisattva. Xiaochen shook his head and said, "That's impossible. If you hand over Zhuangzhenghe, I'll leave." Otherwise, you can forget about stopping me. Just as Xiao Chen was thinking, Zhuang Zhenghe suddenly laughed maniacally, appearing incredibly savage. Zhuang Zhenghe should not have come in person. Otherwise, he would not have fled so quickly at the slightest sign of trouble. Ha ha ha. Little fool, Xiao Chen, you are really naive. Do you think that you can defeat me? Look at where you are now. I'll count to 3, and you are still not leaving. It will be hard for you to leave now. Ha ha ha. That's the count to 3. Xiao Chen, you can die now. The Dongyue Ghost Emperor laughed loudly, and the Yellow Spring's mysterious phenomenon vanished. Then, he left. Xiao Chen revealed an expression of joy as he turned around. Whoosh! 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 A strong wind blew, and Xiao Chen retreated 5 kilometers. The Dao Might behind him did not scatter as he stood firmly. Humph! What Zhuang Zhenghe? I have never seen him before, nor do I know him. I don't mind teaching you a lesson. The Dongyue Ghost Emperor laughed coldly. An eerie wind blew, and wisps of spirits floated out from his body. When the cultivators who came to sweep the graves in the graveyard saw the mysterious phenomenon before them, they could not understand what was happening. Looking up, the boundless starry sky was dotted with thousands of stars, like a chessboard, giving one the illusion that they were in the universe. Zhuang Zhenghe was clearly in the ghost domain. How could he be willing to leave just like that? Xiao Chen flew forward and caught the divine weapon that bounced back. He said indifferently, "Not bad. You changed your appearance and your strength improved significantly. It wouldn't be that easy to leave." The corner of Xiao Chen's mouth curled up into a smile. His interest grew. With a wave of his hand, the 7 deadly sins floated out. The moment the blood clouds parted, a wisp of golden Buddhist light fell from the entrance of the cave. It was bright and dazzling, and it was especially eye-catching in this dark space. When Xiao Chen looked again, Zhuang Zhenghe was long gone. Given his movement technique, he would definitely not be able to catch up. The newcomer retreated 1 kilometer and hovered in the air, merging with the sky. Soon, the spirits and malicious spirits materialized the vast mysterious phenomenon of hell. What is that? The bloody monk, Zhuang Zhenghe, wiped off the blood from his lips. He said with some hatred, "How can it compare to you, Blue Dragon King, Xiao Chen? After 5 years of silence, 5 years of silence, you shocked the entire Kunlun realm with a single brilliant feat." This greatly startled Xiao Chen. The Buddha statue looked like the Kittagarbha Bodhisattva that he had seen before. The image of the Buddha statue sat within, slowly fading away. The flood-like source of sin slowly scattered from the body of the image. Whoosh! Ghost domain. Is that so? However, my saber has not truly been drawn yet. How can you be so proud and aloof? Under Prime, you are the first person capable of receiving 30% of my palm strike's force, the Dongyue Ghost Emperor said indifferently. The East Mountain Ghost Monarch asked indifferently. As he looked at Xiao Chen, there was an unconcealable fluctuation hidden in his calm gaze. When the person in front turned his head to look, he was startled. Then, he fled in a fluster. Feeling nervous, he slowed down. This formed a boundless pressure of the great Tao, strong and tyrannical. This was the aura of a prime. Xiao Chen did not care about the mocking tone in the Dongyue Ghost Emperor's words. He asked coldly, "Where is the Kittagarbha Bodhisattva? Tell me what you are plotting, and I'll leave you with an intact corpse." In the end, this fellow truly rose up. Now, Xiao Chen no longer had absolute confidence of keeping the other party here. He raised his head and looked into the distance. There was a black dot at the limits of his vision, quickly moving away. Suddenly, a figure descended from the sky and threw a palm strike at Xiao Chen. This palm strike was gentle and soft, but it contained startling might. The instant the palm wind landed, the entire sky seemed to descend along with the person. Xiao Chen's heart skipped a beat. Big brother Ing is here. Ing Zongtian, at least you know what's good for you. The saber light and palm wind clashed, and the world turned dark. Then, it shattered into pieces, the entire sky shattering. Big brother! Dang! Furthermore, there was still the Dongyue Ghost Emperor blocking the way. There was no way to give chase. Xiaochen retorted coldly, not bothering to hide his expression. Xiaochen narrowed his eyes and executed the fish dragon art. Then, he moved around like a dragon. Then, he shook off all the sins that came over and gave chase. A light flashed, and the 7 divine weapons merged into one. Then, Xiaochen stepped on the 7 deadly sins. Xiaochen executed the first move of the flawless saber technique, the void-breaking stance. Wait here for me for a while. This fellow is so confident. What trump cards does he have? Xiaochen narrowed his eyes as he looked at this person. This person was one of the deity Dao Union's 3 primes, the Dongyue Ghost Emperor. Xiaochen could not help shouting, "Zhuang Zhenghe, it turns out that you are not dead yet." At Ing Zongtian's request, Xiaochen helplessly gave up and withdrew his great Dao might. In that instant, Xiaochen's vision widened. The Buddhist light descended for a moment before vanishing. Clearly, it was the person refining this sin's origin energy. Knowing that he had been exposed and that something was wrong, he quickly withdrew his technique and left. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Xiaochen executed the void-breaking stance again. However, this time, he did not use the saber but space. Bang! Just at this moment, a figure flew over from behind. He was like a Haotian sun, illuminating the surroundings and sending out a bright light. Back then, Xiaochen had destroyed the other party's lair in the sea region adjacent to Heavenly Star Island, leaving only a head behind. Unexpectedly, this person came out again and stirred up trouble. However, Xiaochen had no choice now. He used his body to control the saber, using the saber to control space, tearing through space. With Xiaochen's wasteful consumption, his speed immediately increased explosively. Everywhere he passed, tears appeared in space. Strange, I clearly have no impression of this person's appearance. Why does the air he exudes seem so familiar? Light flickered in Xiaochen's palm, and the images of many sabers spun around and merged into the saber. After 1 hour, not only did Zhuang Zhenghe not close the distance, but it even widened. Zhuang Zhenghe felt very confident, showing no fear as he showed a mocking expression. Dongyue Ghost Emperor. However, this person before Zhuang Zhenghe seemed to be a surprise. Unexpectedly, he was incredibly fast. A Buddhist light flickered under Zhuang Zhenghe's feet, and Bodhi lights surrounded him. Flowers bloomed and withered. Upon hearing Xiaochen's shout, the owner of that body clearly paused, significantly startled. That was right. This person was Ing Zongtian. He had sensed an intense fluctuation in the Haotian sect. When he discovered that it was Xiaochen, he immediately gave chase. The instant the other party turned his head, Xiaochen clearly saw his appearance, and he immediately felt suspicious. This startled Xiaochen, but he did not fluster in the face of danger. At the critical moment, Xiaochen shouted, and great Dao energy filled his entire body as he swung his saber. With Xiaochen's speed, as long as a prime did not make a move, no one could escape from him. However, I have something very important that requires me to go to the ghost domain, whoosh. After giving chase for a while, inspiration flashed in Xiaochen's mind. Suddenly, he recalled why this aura felt so familiar. Ha! How arrogant! Don't be unable to differentiate good from bad. Leave immediately, and I'll pretend that I did not see you. It looked like a startling battle was about to start. Xiaochen looked around and realized that he had chased Zhuang Zhenghe all the way from the Tianwu domain to the ghost domain. Chapter 1478. Big Brother Ing, why did you let him go? With our combined strength, we can definitely make him retreat. Xiaochen said reluctantly. Since Zhuang Zhenghe fled to the ghost domain, he definitely had something to do with the Dongyue Ghost Emperor. Xiaochen was unwilling to give up such a good lead. Ing Zongtian smiled and said, "It's not that simple. The strength of a prime is more powerful than you imagine. If you really fought, you would be the one at a disadvantage. Furthermore, he has the geographical advantage in the ghost domain, and the ghost race experts can help him at any time. Even with me, if we were to fight, it would only be a situation where both sides would suffer. After listening to Ng Zongtian's explanation, Xiaoqin slowly calmed down and analyzed the situation. That was indeed the case. Naturally, Xiaoqin understood this logic. However, he was too anxious and lost his rationality. There was still a huge gap between him and a prime. At best, he could retreat unscathed. However, this was already very impressive. For many years, no one had been able to challenge the authority of a prime. Before a prime, the Ninth Heaven Emperor Wu was just an ordinary existence. To be able to catch the Dongyue Ghost Emperor's palm strike calmly and confront him, Xiao Chen's improvement was already very obvious. Many thanks, big brother. I was indeed too anxious earlier, but... Xiao Chen had never been one to waste time on an insignificant problem. After thinking it through, he immediately thanked Xiao Chen. Ng Zongtian smiled amiably. Even if I didn't come, nothing would have happened to you. However, what's wrong? It must be something extraordinary for you to be so anxious. Xiao Chen nodded and explained his encounter in the bloody cemetery, as well as the ins and outs of the Kitagarbha Bodhisattva. That's true. In that case, I really took the risk earlier. After hearing that, Ng Zongtian regretted letting the Dongyue Ghost Emperor go for nothing. Now that he thought about it, the Dongyue Ghost Emperor clearly had other reasons for retreating so easily despite having the geographical advantage. Xiao Chen, on the other hand, was a little more open-minded. He smiled and said, "It's better to give this matter further thought. Since I'm here, big brother Ng, please invite me to the Haotian sect." Ng Zongtian was rather carefree. The smile on his face did not fade. He nodded and said, "Let's go and have a drink or two. You can explain to me about Tao. Don't hold back. Of course, I'll tell you everything I know. But I have to go to the bloody cemetery first. I have a friend waiting for me there." "Alright, let's go." The two of them leapt into the air and swiftly left the ghost domain. On the other side, after the Dongyue Ghost Emperor left, he met up with Zhuang Zhenghe with a gloomy expression. "I've told you many times not to contact me. It's not time to expose our relationship yet," scolded the Dongyue Ghost Emperor coldly. Zhuang Zhenghe appeared somewhat startled, not daring to retort. He whispered, "I did not expect this brat to grow so fast. I thought that you would be able to deal with him easily with your means." "Nonsense. If I could deal with him easily, why would I allow him to live until now? Let me tell you, even Emperor Forsaken would have to put in a lot of effort to kill him now." The earlier palm strike had failed to truly push back Xiao Chen. The Dongyue Ghost Emperor felt somewhat frustrated, and he was not in a good mood. If not for the need to maintain some connection to the Kitagarbha Bodhisattva, the Dongyue Ghost Emperor would not have been so magnanimous to Xiao Chen without this worry. How can he be so strong? In that case, why did you not kill him? Aren't you just nurturing a tiger and inviting calamity? Zhuang Zhenghe asked with lingering fear. It turned out that he had nearly died at the other party's hands. Fortunately, Zhuang Zhenghe had not been careless and fled when the situation turned bad. Otherwise, he might have ended up as a pile of bones. The Dongyue Ghost Emperor glanced at Zhuang Zhenghe and said indifferently, "You do not need to know about this. Bring me to see the Kitagarbha Bodhisattva." Before a prime, Zhuang Zhenghe did not show any temper. He was docile and knew how to adapt to circumstances. After listening to the prime's instructions, Zhuang Zhenghe quickly led the Dongyue Ghost Emperor to the Yellow Springs of Hell. Right now, Hell had already become a forbidden land, not open to the public. Furthermore, after the Kitagarbha Bodhisattva's head merged with his body, his control over Hell became very strong. If he was not willing, even a prime would find it hard to see him. With Zhuang Zhenghe leading the way, the Dongyue Ghost Emperor arrived at the gates of Hell without any obstructions. After the gates of Hell was the Yellow Springs. He recalled that the 6 paths of reincarnation were here as well. "Wait here," the Dongyue Ghost Emperor said. After the East Mountain Ghost Monarch said that, he walked in alone. After crossing the gates of hell, it was the Yellow Springs Road. Even a prime could only see black and white in this world. Aside from that saber light that someone left behind many years ago, no one else could bring color to this place. However, the situation now seemed somewhat different. At the end of the Yellow Springs Road, extremely far away, one could vaguely see a seven-colored Buddhist light. It was like the waves of the sea rising and falling, appearing indistinct. When one listened carefully, one could hear many Buddhist incantations echoing in one's ears. The incantation that was buzzing like a mosquito was not being chanted by one person, but by the overlapping voices of many people. The Buddhist incantations overlapped, and the Buddhist might was heavy, calming one's heart and making one sigh at the might of Buddhist might. On the Yellow Springs Road, the Dongyue Ghost Emperor moved quickly. Soon, he arrived at the abyss-like underworld river. On the other side of the river was the boundless Sea of Bitterness. The Sea of Bitterness was filled with endless aggrieved spirits. A large Buddha floated on the sea. The aggrieved spirits and malicious spirits were like ants struggling in the Sea of Bitterness. There were 800 arhats around the large Buddha, chanting with their eyes closed. The overlapping Buddhist incantations came from these people. Occasionally, a large number of aggrieved spirits and malicious spirits were purified. They flew into the large Buddha's body like thousands of fireflies. Naturally, the large Buddha was the mysterious and unfathomable Kittagarbha Bodhisattva. He opened his eyes and withdrew his dharmic incarnation. Then, he leaped over the underworld river and arrived before the Dongyue Ghost Emperor. That disciple of yours seems to be rather unlucky. Not long after he helped you refine the sin, Shaoqin discovered him, the Dongyue Ghost Emperor said with some dissatisfaction. He even exposed my relationship with you. The Kittagarbha Bodhisattva's mortal body was that of an old man wearing a kasaya and holding a staff. He had a long beard and eyebrows, looking like an esteemed Buddhist monk from head to toe. It has not reached that stage yet. He does not know my background, much less my current strength. Even if he discovered some clues, he could not do anything about it. You are not here to seek me out over such a small matter, right? The Kittagarbha Bodhisattva's deep eyes revealed boundless wisdom and an unfathomable Buddhist light. That's right. Emperor Forsaken predicted that Shaoqin would go to the Blue Dragon Palace soon. How much do you know about the Blue Dragon Palace? Tell me. The Dongyue Ghost Emperor did not believe in Buddhism. Buddhism did not exist in the Kunlun realm either. Hence, the Dongyue Ghost Emperor was not interested in the Kittagarbha Bodhisattva's identity and did not show much respect for him. The Dongyue Ghost Emperor only treated the Kittagarbha Bodhisattva as an expert, a peak expert who was strong enough to work with him. In the Dongyue Ghost Emperor's eyes, strength reigned supreme. All faith, including the deity race, was meaningless. I have never heard of the Blue Dragon Palace. However, in my era, the Blue Dragon already existed. It was one of the 7-colored divine dragons. It had a noble bloodline and was second only to the 3 ancestor dragons in the dragon race. Upon hearing this, greed flashed in the Dongyue Ghost Emperor's eyes. He looked at the Kittagarbha Bodhisattva and said, I need you to help me. In the end, Emperor Forsaken is too selfish. I don't believe that he will give up a lot of benefits. I still have to rely on myself. The Kittagarbha Bodhisattva thought for a long time before saying, sure. However, you have to think of a way to help me refine the sins in the bloody graveyard. That is difficult. Shaoqin is on guard. Furthermore, that place is in Zongtian's territory. The Dongyue Ghost Emperor muttered to himself with a frown, weighing the pros and cons, think about it yourself. This Bodhisattva still needs to purify the thousands of aggrieved souls in this hell. I swear not to become a Buddha until hell is empty. The Kittagarbha Bodhisattva chanted his Buddhist name, and a strange light flashed in his eyes. Then, he reverted to his dharmic incarnation and continued purifying the aggrieved souls and malicious spirits in the boundless Sea of Bitterness. When the Dongyue Ghost Emperor saw this scene, he thought to himself, this old bald donkey is no easier to deal with than Emperor Forsaken. none of them were easy to deal with. The Dongyue Ghost Emperor flung his sleeves and pondered how to satisfy the other party's conditions. Then, he left this place. The boundless sea of bitterness in the Yellow Springs hell still existed. Only the saber light that the Qing Emperor left behind no longer existed. Chapter 1479. Tianwu Domain, Haotian Sect, Shao Chen, Mo Chen, and Ing Zongtian casually sat down in a pavilion on a mountain peak and analyzed the matter of the Kittagarbha Bodhisattva. I know about this Kittagarbha Bodhisattva. Long ago, there was a legend that there was a great Buddha hidden in the depths of hell with extremely horrifying strength. However, he never left hell and never interfered with the matters of the outside world. Hence, few people know about him. Ing Zongtian put down his teacup and continued, furthermore, the Qing Emperor already killed him 10,000 years ago. Hence, no one paid any attention to the matter of this great Buddha. Mo Chen read many ancient texts on Buddhism. Then, she continued, during the immortal epoch, Buddhism flourished, not much weaker than the immortal court. In the cultivation of Buddhism, Bodhisattva was in existence only inferior to Buddha. They were only one step away from becoming a Buddha. Feeling interested, Shaochen asked, which step? Grand vows. For a Bodhisattva to become a Buddha, one has to cultivate the Mahayana Buddhist scriptures and make a grand vows. After completing them, one can prove one's Tao and become a Buddha. When Shaochen heard this, he felt stunned. He asked in confusion, that's simple. In that case, if a Bodhisattva purposely made the grand vows very simple, wouldn't one be able to become a Buddha easily? Mo Chen smiled faintly and said, you could say that. However, no one would do that. The difficulty and simplicity of the grand vows directly determined how strong one would be after becoming a Buddha. Ordinary grand vows are called minor grand vows. The more difficult ones are called major grand vows. The Bodhisattva would choose the difficulty of the grand vows and the number of grand vows based on their own wisdom. Most Bodhisattvas would choose minor grand vows. Those with some wisdom would challenge major grand vows. The most famous would be the 48 major grand vows that Amitabha Buddha made. He was undoubtedly the strongest person in ancient Buddhism. Clearly, this was Ing Zongtian's first time hearing such an explanation. He asked interestedly, what does this have to do with the Kittagarbha Bodhisattva? Mo Chen smiled and replied seriously, it has a lot to do with it. The Buddhists explain the grand vows as grand vows as grand vows. After understanding one's nature, they show compassion for all living beings. Then, they use a sincere and unwavering heart to make a wish to save all living beings. However, this is a Buddhist explanation. From an outsider's point of view, how could it be so mystical? The so-called grand wish should be some kind of wish power cultivation. The greater the wish, the greater the gift from the heaven and earth, and the stronger one's strength will be. If one's root of wisdom isn't strong enough, they won't be able to fulfill their great ambitions. They will be stuck at a bottleneck in cultivation. Upon hearing this, Ing Zongtian laughed and said, if your explanation was in a place where Buddhism thrives, they would definitely treat you as a heretic. However, I feel that it makes sense. It's just like the power of faith of the gods, except that the power of faith of the Buddhists is more mysterious. Mo Chen smiled and nodded. According to the ancient records, this Kittagarbha Bodhisattva had a root of wisdom. As a Bodhisattva, he could surpass many Buddhas. Originally, when he was preparing to become a Buddha, a great tribulation of the world happened. The immortal epoch was destroyed, and the Buddhist world was implicated. Countless Buddhas fell as a result. When he saw the ancient order of Buddhism, he immediately changed his great ambition. He swore that he would not become a Buddha until hell was empty. If hell is not empty, I swear not to become a Buddha. As Shaochen mulled over these words, he entered deep thought. He seemed to have figured something out. The greatness of this great ambition is comparable to the 48 great ambitions of the Amitabha Buddha back then. Once he succeeds, his strength will be immeasurable. He might even become the Lord Buddha of the New World. Mo Chen continued her analysis, voicing her opinion. Given this, it looked like the Kittagarbha Bodhisattva was very ambitious. What he wanted was to become the lord of the Buddha world, a true great world, outside of the abandoned world. When the ancient Buddhist world was destroyed, the Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva entered hell and made such a great ambition. He was really decisive. Mo Chen continued, now that I understand all this, it is not hard to understand why the Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva is after the sins of Big Brother Shao. It might be because of the words hell is not empty. Inspiration flashed in Shao Chen's mind. He revealed an expression of understanding. Mo Chen's rigorous speculation cleared up some of his original doubts. He was suddenly enlightened and had figured everything out. Shao Chen said sullenly, I've figured it out. The sins on me were left by the Qing Emperor. Back then, the Qing Emperor also had a cultivation technique for absorbing sins. He must have gone to hell to collect the sins that originally existed. Naturally, the place with the most sins was hell. For the sake of cultivating the good and evil beneficence art, the Qing Emperor must have gone to hell. Given this, it looked like the Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva and the Qing Emperor had a grudge long ago. The Qing Emperor was also very familiar with hell. Back then, the Qing Emperor took away a large number of sins from hell. However, the Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva's great ambition was to not become a Buddha until hell was empty. The Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva had to purify all the sins in hell before he could become a Buddha. However, a large portion of the sins in hell were on the Qing Emperor. Even if he was done, he would not be able to become a Buddha. He would have to cleanse the sins of the Qing Emperor as well. Back then, the Bloody Emperor's road might have been Shao Chen's doing, wanting to force out all of Shao Chen's sins. After hearing Shao Chen's words, Mo Chen smiled faintly and did not say anything else. On the other hand, Ying Zongtian's horizons were greatly broadened and he gasped in amazement. He looked at Mo Chen and couldn't help but praise, I've long heard that Miss Mo is extraordinarily intelligent. You're proficient in the four arts, medicine, divination, astrology, and so on. Today, I've finally seen it for myself. Without a vast amount of knowledge, no one else would be able to understand the cause and effect of the Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva's matters so clearly. Ying Zongtian's words were sincere admiration, and he did not mean to be polite. Thank you for your praise, Senior. Mo Chen was very happy to receive the praise of a prime. She smiled faintly to express her thanks. However, what made her even happier was solving this mystery for Shao Chen. Shao Chen said sullenly, we absolutely cannot let him become a Buddha. Otherwise, given his character, neither of us will have a good ending. Shao Chen did not want to care about the matters of the Buddhist realm. However, the existence of the Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva already threatened his existence, so he had to do something about it. Ying Zongtian sighed softly, right now, the Kunlun realm is in a precarious situation. There is a demonic calamity ahead, which could descend at any moment. Then, there is an ambitious and ruthless person like Emperor Forsaken. Now, there is the Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, who is eyeing us covetously. After the old Thunder King left, the world will truly fall into chaos. The Kunlun realm's calamity is truly unavoidable. Shao Chen's heart sank. Big Brother Ying, is the demonic calamity really that severe? Ying Zongtian's expression turned grave. He smiled bitterly and helplessly. It is very severe. Just the 18 demon monarchs are already too much to bear. The even stronger Dark Church has yet to appear. It is hard to be optimistic even if we want to. Even if we gather all the power of the Kunlun realm, our chances of victory are very slim. Furthermore, we are like a pile of loose sand now. The situation was very pessimistic. No wonder the Myriad Law Fiend Master was so grave 3 months ago. Is there no way to resolve this? She asked worriedly. The teacup fell heavily to the ground. Ying Zongtian glanced at Shao Chen and said, of course, there is. As long as someone is as strong as the Thunder King or surpasses the Thunder King, they can rule the Kunlun realm. Then, they can be like the Qing Emperor back then, turning the tide and fighting against the 18 demon monarchs alone. Little brother Shao, I have confidence in you. You have never disappointed me before. This is the last time, and you will definitely not disappoint me. Xiaochen revealed a rare seriousness on his face. He put down the teacup by his lips and said, "Without Big Brothering taking care of me in secret, I would have died many times already. Although I am not as sentimental as Big Brothering, I am someone who knows how to be grateful. I will definitely do my best to protect the Kunlun realm." A heroic spirit appeared in Zongtian's heart. He smiled and said, "You are still the same as before, not exaggerating." "That's right. We cultivators only seek peace of mind. Even if we fight to the death, we will do our best. 2 days from now, I will give you a generous gift at the Dragon's Gates banquet." "You are most welcome." Xiaochen did not overthink. Naturally, it would be for the best if Big Brothering could come. Following that, Zongtian started asking questions of Xiaochen. Xiaochen spoke without holding back, giving Zongtian some inspiration. Before leaving, Xiaochen instructed Zongtian to help guard the sin in the Scarlet Graveyard. When he was strong enough, he would come and destroy it. Zongtian knew that this matter was very important. He knew that he was duty-bound, so he did not hesitate to agree. Chapter 1480. After saying goodbye to Zongtian, Xiaochen brought Mo Chen to the Scarlet Graveyard once more. As Xiaochen looked at the sky and the dense scarlet clouds that remained all year round, he frowned slightly, not knowing what to do. Sin was hard to get rid of. Aside from purifying it, it would be hard to find any other means to cleanse it. Unfortunately, the cultivators in the Kunlun realm who had fortuitous encounters and learned how to purify them would find it hard to purify such vast sin. The truly capable one was the Buddhist sect's Kitagarbha Bodhisattva. The Buddhists specialized in this in the first place. Furthermore, the Kitagarbha Bodhisattva was a peak-esteemed monk from the ancient Buddhist sections. This was really problematic. At his wit's end, Xiaochen could not think of a good solution. Even the prime Zongtian could not do anything about it. What could Xiaochen do? "Mo Chen, do you know how to get rid of this sin?" Xiaochen asked softly as he looked at the scarlet clouds. Mo Chen shook her head. Even with her vast knowledge, she did not know how to get rid of this vast sin. However, she made a mental note to go back and search for ancient texts on sin to help Big Brother Xiao resolve this problem. Xiaochen had only asked casually. When he saw the situation, he said softly, "Let's go back." 2 days later, the Dragon's Gates banquet was held as scheduled. The venue was the plaza where the Dragon's Gates re-establishment ceremony was held. The guests were the same as before, and none of the Dragon's Gate elders were missing. The story was still the same. However, the Blue Dragon King was no longer the same as before. Hence, this world was no longer the same. Xiaochen still remembered the day of the Dragon's Gate's re-establishment. The various holy lands, both overtly and covertly, came to disrupt and obstruct the ceremony. On that day, the white-clad Blue Dragon King faced the mockery of 10-odd holy lands' first elders alone, nearly shutting down the Dragon's Gate's re-establishment ceremony. However, today, the same scene and nearly the same people appeared. However, during the Dragon's Gate's banquet, these people greeted Xiaochen with smiles and congratulated him. The situation was completely reversed. Xiaochen was rather open-minded and did not mind too much. More or less, these sects had helped him during his great tribulation of wind and fire. There was no need to take the dispute seriously. After all, there was no feud. After noon that day, Xiaochen began to prepare for a lecture on the Tao. He was going to tell them everything he knew about the Tao. The Holy Lord, the clan leaders of the ancient clans, and many other people of virtue and prestige had all come for the same reason. Seeing that they were finally getting to the main topic, they all revealed joyful expressions and listened with anticipation. Xiaochen sat in the middle of the great hall. Mo Chen, Yu Bingyun, and the many Dragon's Gate doyens accompanied him. The chairs on the left and right sides of the room were occupied by important figures. There was the Heavenly Province Academy's Holy Lord, the Yinyang Utopia's Grotto Mistress, and many other patriarchs. Nearly all the major characters of the Heavenly Starry Ocean who could hold their own were here. After Xiaochen calmed his emotions for a while, he prepared to speak. I am just a beginner in the great Tao energy and do not know much. I will only speak about what I know and what I comprehended. I hope that everyone will not be disappointed. The Blue Dragon King is too humble. You are the first cultivator to gain the Tao in the post-ancient era. You proved that the great Tao energy is not something of legend. That is already enough for you to be proud of. There is no need to be humble. The Heavenly Province Academy's Holy Lord smiled faintly as he spoke the truth, half flattering Xiao Chen. Actually, this was the truth. Xiao Chen was indeed just a beginner. However, compared to these holy lords, he was much stronger. Xiao Chen did not bother with pleasantries. Then, he started to speak about the Tao. However, just as he was about to speak, 3 figures suddenly appeared in the sky. Then, they charged forward. Their strong auras and tyrannical auras overturned everything in their way. Whoosh! 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 Earlier, they were at the horizon. In the blink of an eye, 3 figures arrived uninvited and entered the Great Hall. The newcomers were the 3 giants of the deity Tao Union, Emperor Forsaken, the Dongyue Ghost Emperor, and the Heaven-Punishing Prime. Xiao Chen's heart sank. He felt slightly angry, but his expression did not change. However, the expressions of the many honored guests changed drastically. These 3 giants were all primes. This was especially so for Emperor Forsaken. He was now publicly acknowledged as the strongest person in the Kunlun realm. Senior Deity Sovereign. The honored guests seated in the chairs all stood up and greeted the Deity Sovereign. At this moment, the respect for the strong was also fear for Emperor Forsaken. The atmosphere immediately turned strange. Who could have imagined that the Dragon's Gate's re-establishment banquet would attract all 3 of the deity Tao Union's primes? Emperor Forsaken exuded a strong presence. He had a faint smile on his face as he looked at Xiao Chen and said, I came uninvited. Little brother Xiao Chen, I hope you don't mind. Xiao Chen retorted indifferently, what if I mind? This place does not welcome anyone from the deity Tao Union. Some people could be forgiven, but others could never be forgiven. The 3 before Xiao Chen were the latter. Xiao Chen drew a clear line in his heart, not willing to hide the disgust in his heart. The moment he spoke, the atmosphere turned tense. Emperor Forsaken smiled faintly and said, Little brother Xiao Chen, why get angry? Isn't it a sermon? Can't we add 3 more chairs? The heaven-punishing corpse god said coldly, Brat, don't be ignorant. Do you really think that you are a major character on equal footing with us? It is your honor that the deity sovereign is giving you face. Xiao Chen smiled and said, that is the honor of those dogs by his side, not me, Xiao Chen. The heaven-punishing corpse god's face darkened. You dare to scold me? A berserk aura burst out of the heaven-punishing corpse god's body. The entire hall started shaking. An oppressive aura was unleashed, causing the guests to be startled. Everyone felt fear in their hearts. This was the rage of a prime. No one dared to endure it. That's right. I am indeed scolding you. Xiao Chen smiled faintly, appearing calm and at ease. He only casually took a step forward and endured the other party's aura, not letting the Dragon's Gate's people endure it. Calm and unruffled, angry but not flustered. This was the current Xiao Chen. The smile on Emperor Forsaken's face did not fade. He stretched out his hand to block the heaven-punishing corpse god, who was preparing to attack. He said, Little brother Xiao Chen, since you are not going to welcome us, let's just leave. However, before we leave, there is a debt that we need to settle. The smile on Emperor Forsaken's face disappeared. He was finally going to state the purpose of this trip. There are countless debts between us. If you really want to settle them, can you finish them? Xiao Chen revealed a cold smile. Although he was no match for a prime now, there was no need to be too afraid. At the very most, he would just burn indiscriminately. No one would benefit from that. There was no need to be polite to the other party. Furthermore, the other party personally coming to the Dragon's Gate's banquet was already the greatest impoliteness to Xiao Chen. Emperor Forsaken ignored the heaven-punishing corpse god. He continued, the Blue Dragon King has always been a bold person. Could it be that you do not want to admit it? Let me ask you this, do you acknowledge the identity of the shadowless saber sovereign? Xiao Chen's heart sank. He did not know what the other party was thinking, so he remained silent. If you don't say anything, I'll take it that you admit it. Back then, you used the identity of the shadowless saber sovereign to severely injure the divine sun. It is time to settle this debt properly today. When Xiao Chen heard that, he smiled coldly in his heart. That's right. The shadowless saber sovereign is indeed me. I was also the one who injured Diwuk. However, that is because he is not as skilled. However, if you want to cause trouble, you will have an excuse. Let me ask you this, Emperor Forsaken, what exactly do you want? If you have something to say, just say it. There is no need to beat around the bush and make things so complicated. The other party was here to cause trouble in the first place. He would not give up until he achieved his goal. The so-called settling debts was just an excuse. Emperor Forsaken said sullenly, this emperor is not as unbearable as you think. Back then, you chopped down the divine sun. Today, you have to receive 3 palm strikes from me. Then, this debt will be written off. The moment Emperor Forsaken said that, the crowd burst into an uproar. Was Emperor Forsaken not being too much of a bully? After all, he was the strongest person of the Kunlun realm, someone who had been famous for a long time. Yet, he wanted a junior to receive 3 palm strikes from him. Divine Sovereign, isn't this a little overboard? The grudges of youngsters. Since the Divine Sun is safe and sound, let's just forget about it. The Heavenly Province Academy's Holy Lord could not stand by and watch, so he advised. Interesting. I can explain the Tao to you all, but you cannot receive 3 palm strikes from the Divine Sovereign. Since you are advising, how about you receive 3 palm strikes from the Divine Sovereign? The Dongyue Ghost Emperor, who had been silent all this while, suddenly spoke, immediately stopping the Heavenly Province Academy's Holy Lord from speaking. The remaining people feared the other party's strength. Even though they wanted to advise, they did not dare to say anything. The tyrannical 3 giants of the deity Tao Union ruined the atmosphere of a proper banquet. Everyone felt angry but did not dare to say anything. Chapter 1481. Receive 3 moves from you. Why should I receive 3 moves from you? Xiao Chen did not fall for it, remaining extremely calm. Did Xiao Chen really think that Xiao Chen was a hothead, thinking that he was unrivaled just because he was strong? Xiao Chen was very clear on the distance between him and Emperor Forsaken. The other party was the strongest prime and also the strongest person in the Kunlun realm, an unrivaled existence in the Kunlun realm. Emperor Forsaken, how about I receive 3 moves from you? Outside the hall, Yingzongtian arrived late with his first senior sister. However, he finally dared to arrive at this crucial moment. Another supreme martial artist had arrived. Yingzongtian smiled at Xiao Chen and walked in with his back to the sunlight. Emperor Forsaken did not feel surprised. He smiled faintly and said, you came at the right time. However, Yingzongtian, he has to receive these 3 palm strikes. Why? Emperor Forsaken, can you not be so tyrannical? Someone among the Dragon's Gate elders said in dissatisfaction. Suddenly, Emperor Forsaken guffawed endlessly. Then, he said indifferently, it looks like I have been good-tempered for too long. Why? Just because I am the strongest person in the Kunlun realm is enough. Right after Emperor Forsaken spoke, a divine light suddenly burst out of his body. Then, he shook the entire hall, instantly raising it to the ground. Pu Ci. Pu Ci. Half of the cultivators present vomited a mouthful of blood. Before this strong divine light, they vomited blood and were sent flying. After taking a few steps back, they managed to stabilize their footing and stabilize their bodies. Only a small number of people relied on their own strength to move back and did not suffer any injuries. However, they still felt fear in their hearts. After they stabilized themselves, they all moved back, as they felt killing chi from Emperor Forsaken. Shao Chen blocked this divine light with all his might, protecting the Dragon's Gate elders. He felt his chi and blood surge. The Dragon's Gate elders took this opportunity to retreat, not daring to linger. An enraged Emperor Forsaken was truly too frightening. A single beam of divine light had forced back so many people. The smile on Emperor Forsaken's face did not diminish. He said softly, "I really miss the days when I was young. Back then, I didn't have any scruples. I showed off my abilities and killed whenever I wanted. But when you become a supreme being or a deity emperor, you're always overcautious and indecisive. Is that necessary? That old fart, the Thunder King, died long ago on the Kunlun Road. Why should I be so apprehensive? Indeed, 100 years, 200 years, or 1,000 years. Emperor Forsaken hadn't really made a move yet because the existence of the Thunder King had suppressed him for too long. Thinking back to the past, when he was young, he was also full of vigor, having his own golden years. There had been battles where swords and blades dripped with blood, battles where life and death hung in the balance. He didn't get to where he was today by living like a prince. It was because of his unparalleled talent and his decisiveness in killing. Beneath every throne were piles of corpses and boundless blood. Naturally, the deity race's supreme throne was no exception. Why did the Holy Lord present stand up and greet him respectfully the moment they saw him? Of course, it was because of Shao Chen's strength. It was because he had seen how cold-blooded and emotionless this deity emperor was when he was young. It was not just because of the deity emperor's empty title. As Shao Chen spoke, he suddenly threw a palm strike at Shao Chen. Before Shao Chen could prepare, this palm strike struck him, sending him flying into the air and vomiting a large mouthful of blood. Too weak. Shao Chen, you are still not strong enough. I only used 50% of my strength in this palm strike, and you can't even see my shadow. Emperor Forsaken remained standing where he was, a smile on his face. It was like he had never moved at all and had always been there. Shao Chen knelt on one knee and looked at Emperor Forsaken. A trace of shock flashed in his eyes. Shao Chen really could not see Shao Chen at all. He did not even know how he attacked. Furthermore, the force was unbelievably strong. If Shao Chen possessed great Tao energy and negated most of the force, this palm strike would have smashed him to death. The strong are revered in the world. I like to reason with people. However, there are times when I do not like to do so, such as now. An aura that looked down on the world spread out from Emperor Forsaken's body, putting immense pressure on everyone. You have to be clear about who is speaking to you. It is me, Emperor Forsaken. I am not begging you to receive 3 moves from me. This is an order that you cannot defy. A faint sound of wind appeared. Emperor Forsaken's second palm strike arrived. This time, Shao Chen did not relax at all. In the time it took for a spark to fly, he condensed the Taiji Yin-Yang flame diagram in front of him. The instant the Taiji Yin-Yang flame diagram formed, it broke before it could fully form. Shao Chen's heart sank. Without much time to think, he executed the fish dragon art. Shao Chen's body was like a fish in water, changing in thousands of ways. He was like a fish in water, nimble and ever-changing, flickering endlessly. In that instant, thousands of afterimages appeared, real and fake, no one could tell them apart. Emperor Forsaken's eyes lit up. He smiled and said, "Interesting. You do have some strength. However, that is all." In Shao Chen's eyes, Emperor Forsaken's palm strike suddenly became infinitely large, airtight. There was nowhere for him to escape to. Bang! After being struck again, Shao Chen's body soared into the air and went flying back. Shao Chen was a fish. It was like he was in the sea. However, Emperor Forsaken's palm strike directly overturned the entire sea. Emperor Forsaken used absolute strength to knock Shao Chen, who was more skilled, into the air. Tyrannical. This was true tyranny. Not bad at all. Shao Chen, you can be proud. I already used 70% of my strength in this palm strike. It has been many years since I used such strength. I am really not used to it. Emperor Forsaken appeared where he was again. As he watched Xiao Chen fly back, he did not continue attacking. Emperor Forsaken, don't go overboard. Unexpectedly, Emperor Forsaken sent out palm strike after palm strike. A murderous intent flashed on Ying Zongtian's face. Just as Xiao Chen was about to step forward, the Dongyue Ghost Emperor and the Heaven-Punishing Corpse God blocked him with cold smiles. Don't block him. Let him come over. Emperor Forsaken casually turned around and looked at Ying Zongtian. What's wrong? Are you sure you want to receive 3 palm strikes from me? Against you, I won't be as lenient as I am now. As a prime, you should be very clear on my strength. If you had another 100 years, perhaps you might be able to fight me to a draw. However, right now, you really cannot receive 3 palm strikes from me at full power. The rash Ying Zongtian calmed down. Emperor Forsaken was right. If the other party used his full power, the first palm strike could defeat Xiao Chen. The second palm strike could severely injure Xiao Chen. As for the third palm strike, Xiao Chen might not be able to receive it. This was not a true duel. Xiao Chen had to receive the other party's moves. The one who passively received the attacks would be at a disadvantage. Furthermore, Emperor Forsaken's strength was already on par with the Thunder King's in the first place, only slightly weaker. Xiao Chen was indeed much stronger than Xiao Chen. He definitely lived up to his reputation as the strongest person of the Kunlun realm. Even so, Xiao Chen had to receive it. This was his responsibility as a big brother. After thinking for a while, Ying Zongtian made his decision. He said calmly, I'm sure, there is one more palm strike. I'll receive it. However, before Xiao Chen finished speaking, a resonant voice interrupted him. Xiao Chen, who had been smashed into the rubble, pushed aside everything in his way and vomited a mouthful of blood. Xiao Chen revealed a determined expression as he looked calmly at Emperor Forsaken, showing neither joy nor sorrow. Xiao Chen. Ying Zongtian could not help feeling anxious. How could Xiao Chen endure Emperor Forsaken's third palm strike in his current state? An expression of admiration flashed in Emperor Forsaken's eyes. He smiled and said, you have ambition and a good mental state. For you to be able to defeat Wuk, it is not as simple as luck. With one glance, Emperor Forsaken could tell that Xiao Chen's mental state had already recovered its calm, entering a state of combat. Given Xiao Chen's current state, he might really be able to receive the first palm strike's might. Whoosh! Whoosh! Just at this moment, 3 figures descended from the sky. They were the Bright Moon Empress, the Myriad Law Fiend Master, and the Cyclic Astral Lord, who originally did not intend to show themselves. When the 3 giants of the deity Dao Union appeared, these 3 primes of the heavenly starry ocean sensed it and had been observing silently. Due to various reasons, they originally did not want to show themselves. Now, they had no choice but to do so. Deity Sovereign, there is no need to use the third palm strike. Why the need to compete with a junior? The might of 2 palm strikes is already sufficient to help the Divine Sun vent his anger. The Cyclic Astral Lord lowered his stance and advised. The Bright Moon Empress also said, Big Brother Qitian, it is already like this. Let's just forget about it. It is not easy for you to personally come to the heavenly starry ocean. Come to my lunar palace and sit for a while. The Myriad Law Fiend Master sighed softly and said, Deity Sovereign, when we were young, we had some friendship. Let's just forget about the third palm strike. The 3 primes respected Emperor Forsaken's strength. They advised him gently, giving him a way out of this embarrassing situation, hoping that he would stop here. However, if Xiao Chen really did not give any face, no matter how strong the deity sovereign was, the 3 primes would step forward. There was a saying, after all is said and done, it is time to meet swords and sabers. Emperor Forsaken showed an uncertain expression. It was impossible to tell whether he was happy, angry, sad, or joyful. No one knew what he was thinking. Would he use the third palm strike or not? Everyone looked anxiously at Emperor Forsaken, the strongest prime of the Kunlun realm, waiting for his decision. However, the development of the matter seemed somewhat unexpected. It seemed like no one had considered Xiao Chen's thoughts. Chapter 1482. After a moment of silence, Emperor Forsaken finally opened his mouth and said, "All right, since so many of my friends have advised me, then I won't make a move. This debt can be considered written off." Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Emperor Forsaken was invincible. Unless it was a crucial moment, no one was willing to fight with him. Being able to obtain such a result was also a fluke. Write it off. Emperor Forsaken, I have never thought of writing things off with you. Xiao Chen, who was seriously injured and had a pale complexion, suddenly opened his mouth and said those words. In an instant, everyone's hearts were in their throats again. What was Xiao Chen trying to do? Big brother Xiao. Mo Chen felt very anxious as she sent a voice projection to Xiao Chen, hoping that he would not act rashly. Don't worry, I have my own plans. Xiao Chen replied casually. However, he did not stop. Instead, he took another step forward. Emperor Forsaken's face darkened as he said indifferently, "Looks like I still have to make my move." Xiao Chen, don't be rash. Everyone quickly tried to dissuade Xiao Chen, not wanting him to do anything drastic. Xiao Chen remained very calm. He said calmly, "I was not rash. I am very clear on what I am doing. The debt between me and the deity Dao Union will not be written off. He, the heaven-abandoning deity sovereign, will not really stop because of this. Today, you can find an excuse for me to injure the Divine Sun. Tomorrow, you can find an excuse for me to kill the Divine Sun. The day after tomorrow, you can come up with a new excuse. As long as you have an excuse, you can make me receive 3 palm strikes and come and go as you please." Xiao Chen's words were like a clap of thunder on the flat ground, powerful and resonant, shaking people's hearts. The truth revealed in his words was a little sad, but in a world where the strong were respected, Xiao Chen's words were not wrong at all. Although the possibility was not high, as long as Emperor Forsaken was the strongest in Kunlun, he could find trouble with Xiao Chen at any time, regardless of any rules. This is a sad and cruel fact. It wasn't that many people hadn't thought of this, but they all chose to ignore it. They just wanted to send away the god of plague, Emperor Forsaken, as soon as possible. Although you seem to make a lot of sense, there are many places in this world where I can come and go as I please. There are also places that I can't go casually. Unfortunately, your dragon sect is not one of them. Emperor Forsaken's expression did not change. He was calm and unruffled as he spoke in an incomparably overbearing manner. The corner of Xiao Chen's mouth curled into a mocking smile as he sneered, "Is that so? Either you kill me today, or you can forget about walking out of the Dragon Gate." Emperor Forsaken laughed. "Interesting. If I want to leave, can you stop me?" "I can't stop him, but I don't mind taking a trip to the God realm. The blade in my hand doesn't mind slaughtering the people of the realm of the gods. As long as I want to, in 100 years or 1,000 years, your god race will sooner or later be exterminated by me." Xiao Chen's gaze turned gloomy as he enunciated every word coldly and emotionlessly. Emperor Forsaken's heart skipped a beat. The image of Xiao Chen hiding in a different place after every 1,000 people he killed appeared in his mind. If Xiao Chen continued killing for 100 years or 1,000 years, just thinking about it made one tremble in fear. Not just anyone could threaten Emperor Forsaken like this. However, Xiao Chen could. If he wanted to hide his identity, Emperor Forsaken would not be able to discover him. The cold wind whistled, and everyone felt a chill hit them, causing their bodies to feel cold for no reason. "Do you really want to die that much?" Emperor Forsaken's aura strengthened continuously, pressing down on Xiao Chen. Heavy clouds churned in the sky. It looked like the sky was sinking. With every moment it sank, the pressure on Xiao Chen increased. It was like a volcano about to erupt. Everyone felt a horrifying energy accumulating in the place. Once it erupted, it would unleash an earth-shattering energy. Who is not afraid of death? Who does not love life? If I were not at a dead end, I would not have to do this. Like now, you can slap my face whenever you want. What is the point of me, Shao Chen, living? A warrior could be killed, but not humiliated. Everyone had their pride. Shao Chen considered himself a martial artist. Before the heavenly Tao, he was as insignificant as an ant. However, even a lowly existence had its own pride. Emperor Forsaken clearly saw Shao Chen's rise today and purposely came to slap his face. Furthermore, it was clear that Emperor Forsaken had succeeded. With 2 effortless palm strikes, Shao Chen could not resist at all. At the banquet of the Dragon's Gate's re-establishment, these 2 palm strikes were like 2 resounding slaps, ruthlessly slapping Shao Chen, who was about to preach the Tao. The various primes stepped forward to plead for leniency, giving Emperor Forsaken face once again. They appeared amiable, but in reality, they only increased the might of the slap. Was it interesting? To Emperor Forsaken, of course, it was interesting. How could it be boring to teach one how to be a person, slap one's face, then put on a humble appearance and leave elegantly? However, it was really boring. To Shao Chen, it was not interesting at all. You can play with me, but don't play with me. If it were in the past, the difference between us would be too great, like an ant and an elephant. An ant challenging an elephant was seeking its own death, so Shao Chen had no choice but to accept it. However, it was different now. Although there was a difference between Shao Chen and Emperor Forsaken, it was not as exaggerated as the difference between an ant and an elephant. Shao Chen's pride would not allow him to be humiliated by others with such a difference. Just this once, I will not accept it. Shao Chen's expression remained calm as he said indifferently, "You are the one who forced me. This is not what I asked for or what I wanted. However, everyone has their own principles and bottom line. I would rather pay with my life." This fellow, Emperor Forsaken, clenched his fist tightly, cracking his knuckles. Was he forcing him to kill someone? However, he could not kill Shao Chen now. The group of primes already gave him sufficient face. If he forcefully made a move, both sides would end up severely injured. No one would be able to escape. However, if he did not kill Shao Chen, could it be that he had to apologize to this fellow? The top prime of the Kunlun realm fell into a dilemma, speechless for a while. When the crowd saw this scene, they could not help feeling shocked. Under the pressure of Emperor Forsaken's strong aura, Shao Chen was actually able to remain so resilient, forcing Emperor Forsaken into speechlessness. Immediately, everyone whispered to each other. As they looked at Emperor Forsaken, they could not help revealing playful expressions. Even the top prime of the Kunlun realm was not omnipotent. This is great. This is too much. Let's see how you deal with this. What exactly do you want? After the stalemate lasted for a long time, Emperor Forsaken finally chose to take a step back. His aura still made it difficult for everyone to breathe, the pressure was like a mountain. However, Emperor Forsaken's tone was clearly weaker than before. Shao Chen said calmly, "It's very simple. Just send out another palm strike. No matter what the result of this palm strike is, you will not be able to escape. No matter what the result is, from today onwards, you are not allowed to use such lousy excuses to attack me. I don't mind you attacking me. If you want to kill me, just have a fair fight. In the future, if I want to kill you, it will definitely be a fair fight. It will not be like today. I do not ask for much. I only want one word, respect." Shao Chen's white robes fluttered in the wind. His fine black hair flowed like a waterfall, fluttering about wantonly. No one expected Shao Chen's final request to be so simple. Shao Chen's request was so simple, just respect. I do not want you to do anything. I just want you to send out a third palm strike. From today onwards, do not look down on me. Whoosh! Shao Chen suddenly drew the lunar shadow saber, giving off a gentle glow. At the same time, an oath stone flew out of the universe ring. The oath stone spun rapidly as it flew towards Emperor Forsaken. Whoosh! 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 Countless pairs of eyes looked at Emperor Forsaken, at the strongest expert of the Kunlun realm. Even experts like the cyclic Astral Lord, the Bright Moon Empress, and the myriad Law Fiend Master were no exception. The meaning in their gazes was not just to see how Shao Chen would decide. Instead, it was a kind of pressure. It was a silent declaration that although Emperor Forsaken was strong, he had to send out a third palm strike today. Emperor Forsaken stretched out his hand, and the oath stone spun around in his palm. It gave off a strong wind that made his long hair flutter. When Emperor Forsaken raised his head and looked at the other party, he had a misconception for some reason. His aura clearly suppressed Shao Chen's. However, no matter how he looked at it, the other party was looking down on him. Chapter 1483. Emperor Forsaken revealed a bitter smile. Then, he grabbed the oath stone and said, I, Qitian, in the name of the Divine Sovereign, swear to the heavens that I will send out another palm strike. After this palm strike, I will absolutely not use any excuse to attack anyone from the Dragon's Gate. Whoosh! The oath stone turned into a boundless light and entered Emperor Forsaken's body. Then, he quickly sent out another palm strike at lightning speed. This palm strike was incredibly fast. The number of people who could see it clearly could be counted on two hands. The heavy clouds in the sky turned golden with a whoosh, spreading out for 5,000 kilometers around. Instantly, golden light burst forth for 5,000 kilometers around, dazzling and resplendent. It was not over yet. The golden clouds suddenly gathered into a huge statue of a deity. That statue was dazzling and smooth like it was made of gold. The clouds in the sky vanished. The sun, moon, and stars were no longer obstructed, appearing before everyone's eyes. It was like one could pluck the stars just by stretching out one's hand. The huge statue of a deity exuded a supreme might, creating a misconception. It was like it had descended from the darkest depths of the universe, sending down a divine punishment. Starry Heaven's divine palm. Qitian is really not showing any mercy this time. When Ing Zongtian saw this scene, his heart sank, and he frowned heavily. The huge statue followed Emperor Forsaken and sent out a palm strike at Shao Chen as well. Whoosh! Before the palm strike arrived, the palm wind already arrived. The strong pressure caused space to distort. Many people who could not dodge in time felt their skin tear, and blood oozed out. Horror flashed in their eyes. Then, with a loud boom, they were all sent flying far away. Shao Chen narrowed his eyes. He could not block this palm strike at all. Even if it was a dermic world, it would shatter. This was a palm strike that Emperor Forsaken did not show any mercy, a palm strike with 100% of his power. Among the many primes present, no one dared to say that they could receive this palm strike without getting injured, let alone Shao Chen. If Shao Chen received it head-on, he would definitely die. There was only one way to break this palm strike, the state of cycle, reversing time and space, returning to the past. Back to the moment when Emperor Forsaken grabbed the oath stone. Otherwise, he wouldn't have stood a chance. It went without saying how difficult it was to execute the Samsara chop in front of Emperor Forsaken. But if he wanted to live, this was the only way. Fight! In his sea of consciousness, the reincarnation heart shone brightly and continuously rotated. Samsara power filled Shao Chen's body. Massacre, destruction, destruction, pain, grief, despair, and death. All kinds of concepts turned into vast illusions that flashed around Shao Chen. Just as that palm was about to touch Shao Chen roared furiously and unleashed his state of cycle. Shao Chen swung the transcendent divine weapon, the lunar shadow saber, executing the cycle chop. Then, he leaped up bravely. Puchi! Endless resistance assaulted him. Shao Chen felt extreme pain. The past had already happened. Reversing spacetime and traveling to the past faced greater resistance than traveling to the future. The resistance from spacetime pressed down on Shao Chen's physical body. His bones crackled, the sound of bones shattering. How difficult! I can't cross it at all. Emperor Forsaken's existence made the pressure from space-time even stronger. Xiaochen felt that his body might shatter in the instant he crossed. In reality, Emperor Forsaken's palm strike was already only 2 centimeters away from Xiaochen. In the next moment, it would land on Xiaochen's chest. Given the might of this palm strike, it was possible that Xiaochen would die without a complete corpse, falling on the spot. The expressions of Ing Zongtian and the others changed dramatically, their hearts pounding. Dao! Just at the crucial moment, the light of the great Dao appeared behind Xiaochen. Then, it surrounded the lunar shadow saber. This great Dao energy came from the saber Dao in the first place. When it infused into the lunar shadow saber, its might would multiply. Ing Zongtian's heart sank. What is Xiaochen trying to do? Trying to perish together with Emperor Forsaken? This is too naive. Although this saber strike is strong, it will only severely injure Emperor Forsaken at best. It will not deal a fatal blow. The expressions of the Bright Moon Empress and the others also changed drastically at this moment. Everyone who could clearly see the trajectory of Emperor Forsaken's attack felt their hearts in their throats, they simply could not bear to watch. Boom! However, what happened in the next moment exceeded everyone's expectations. The might of Emperor Forsaken's palm strike suddenly weakened. The light of the great Dao on Xiaochen's body vanished. The palm wind landed on Xiaochen's chest and knocked him into the air. Xiaochen's internal organs instantly ruptured. After he fell to the ground, he slid back 1 kilometer. His complexion paled, drained of blood. Xiaochen vomited a mouthful of blood. He stabbed the saber in his right hand into the ground and said sullenly, "Many thanks to Emperor Forsaken for teaching me." How can this be? Upon seeing this scene, everyone was in disbelief. To think that Xiaochen did not die. Although Xiaochen was in a sorry state, severely injured, and weak, he managed to receive Emperor Forsaken's full-power palm strike. What exactly happened? For the might of Emperor Forsaken's palm strike to decrease by half. Whoosh! 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 Countless gazes landed on the heaven-abandoning deity sovereign, thinking that he had shown mercy. However, when these gazes landed on Emperor Forsaken's face, they saw a faint saber wound on the smooth right side of Emperor Forsaken's face. Blood seeped out of it. A saber wound? When did Emperor Forsaken get struck by this saber? Why did I not see it? One flew back 1 kilometer, finding it difficult to even stand up. The other had a flourishing aura with only a faint saber wound on his face. The victor of this palm strike and who won were easy to determine. However, the victorious Emperor Forsaken showed an incredibly sullen expression, looking even more unsightly than the injured Xiaochen. Emperor Forsaken showed a sullen expression, not saying a word as he quickly left this place with his hands behind his back. I will abide by my oath. From today on, I will give you and the people of the Dragon's Gate the respect you deserve. These emotionless words came from Emperor Forsaken's mouth. No one could understand why he was in such a bad mood. The Dongyue Ghost Emperor and the Heaven-Punishing Corpse God felt confused. However, when they saw Emperor Forsaken leave, they could not remain here any longer, so they quickly followed. 500 kilometers away, above the ocean, the 3 giants of the deity Dao Union looked at the distant heavenly star island without saying a word. Qitian, what's with that palm strike earlier? Why did its might suddenly weaken at the end? The Dongyue Ghost Emperor could not help asking, unable to understand. The Heaven-Punishing Corpse God could not understand as well. He said calmly, I can tell that you did not weaken it on purpose. Instead, you suddenly weakened it in a rush. Such a last-minute change in moves is a great taboo for the attacker. The backlash from the palm strike is not a good feeling. Emperor Forsaken's expression turned sullen. He said indifferently, if I say that I do not know why either, would you believe me? The moment Xiaochen said that, the Heaven-Punishing Corpse God and the Dongyue Ghost Emperor showed expressions of disbelief. That's impossible. As the person involved, how could you not know why your palm strike weakened? The Heaven-Punishing Corpse God retorted loudly, not believing Xiaochen at all. Emperor Forsaken stretched out his hand and touched the wound on his face. As he looked at the blood on his fingertips, he asked indifferently, "What's impossible about that? Do the two of you know how I got that wound on my face?" This. When the Dongyue Ghost Emperor and the Heaven-Punishing Corpse God heard that, they did not know what to say. Indeed, they did not see how the wound on the Heaven-Punishing Corpse God's face came about. It was clearly a saber wound. However, they really did not see how Shao Qian had drawn his saber. How many years had it been since Emperor Forsaken was injured? How many years had it been since he had seen his own blood? As Emperor Forsaken looked at the blood on his fingertips, he felt very emotional. He remained silent for a long time. There was always someone better. This Kunlun realm was just an abandoned land. Shao Qian had no idea what the true great world was like. The phrase, "frog in a well," was used to describe him. "Should we change the plan?" the Dongyue Ghost Emperor asked cautiously. Emperor Forsaken flicked his finger to get rid of the blood on his fingertips. Then, he said, "We will not change it. The three of us do not need to return. We will just watch here and wait for him to come out. I believe that when he comes out, he will definitely head in the direction of the Blue Dragon Palace." The original plan was for Emperor Forsaken to come here to deal a blow to Shao Qian and humiliate Shao Qian. To let Shao Qian know that there was always someone better and that he was not strong enough. After being humiliated, for the sake of raising his strength, Shao Qian would definitely head to the Blue Dragon Palace. Emperor Forsaken was an ambitious and ruthless person. Naturally, he would not just come over to humiliate Shao Qian. Emperor Forsaken could not wait. He wanted to use practical actions to speed up Shao Qian's trip to the Blue Dragon Palace. However, it looked like the one who was truly humiliated and dealt a blow was not Shao Qian but himself. Chapter 1484. When Emperor Forsaken said that the three of them were not going to leave and were going to stay here and guard the place, Emperor Forsaken was stunned. A strange glint flashed across the Dongyue Ghost Emperor's eyes. After concealing it carefully, he said, "We're going to stand guard here. Wasn't the plan to just send experts to guard this place? Who do we think we are? Do we need to personally guard this place?" The Heaven-Punishing Corpse God frowned and said, "Ghost Monarch, your way of thinking is not good. However, the current Shao Qian cannot be underestimated. Sending someone else would not be enough. No, I still have something to do. I need to go back," the Dongyue Ghost Emperor explained. Then, he looked at Emperor Forsaken and said, "Qitian, I'll go back first. If Shao Qian does anything, I'll meet you at the Blue Dragon Palace. What do you think?" Emperor Forsaken pondered for a while and then said, "What's so urgent? Isn't it the same if you're here? You can also send a message to your subordinates, right?" The Dongyue Ghost Emperor smiled. "It's not a big deal, but I have to make a trip myself. I'm sorry." When Emperor Forsaken saw the situation, he did not question further or force the issue. He said casually, "Do as you see fit. In any case, the secrets of the Blue Dragon Palace will definitely allow us to break through our shackles and leave the Kunlun realm. I know. Once I have news, I will immediately rush to the Blue Dragon Palace to meet up with you." After saying that, the Ghost Emperor turned into a beam of light and left quickly. The Heaven-Punishing Corpse God looked in the direction the Dongyue Ghost Emperor left and asked in confusion, "What's so urgent? As a prime, you don't interfere with the management of the sect. Why would you need to deal with something personally?" Emperor Forsaken let out a meaningful laugh and said, "Xingtian, I'm afraid you don't know, but I received news 3 days ago. He had a confrontation with Shao Qian in the ghost domain, and they almost got into a fight. It was only after Ng Zongtian arrived that the matter was left unsettled. Why didn't he tell us about this?" The Heaven-Punishing Corpse God's expression changed slightly, feeling somewhat angry. He probed, "Could it be a small matter? That's why I did not say it." Emperor Forsaken said indifferently, "At first, I thought it was just a small matter. However, after some investigation, I found something interesting." "What is it?" "Zhuang Zhenghe, do you know this person?" Of course, Xing Tian did not know this Zhuangzhenghe. So, Emperor Forsaken told him about this person's origins and some of his deeds on Heavenly Star Island. Zhuangzhenghe's matters in the sea region around Heavenly Star Island were easy to investigate. With the deity sovereign's means, it would not be difficult at all. Ksitigarbha. The heaven-punishing corpse god immediately understood. Zhuangzhenghe did not know, but the Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, who was connected to Zhuangzhenghe, did. He left in a hurry. Is he trying to collude with the Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva? The heaven-punishing corpse god asked angrily. Emperor Forsaken shook his head. I'm not sure. We still don't know what kind of existence Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva is. However, knowing one thing is enough. The ghost monarch is hiding something from us. Furthermore, it is not a small matter. What should we do, then? Clearly, the heaven-punishing corpse god did not understand these little schemes. Emperor Forsaken smiled coldly and said, he is not qualified to play tricks with me. If everything is just a guess, then it would be fine. If it is true, humph. I have plenty of ways to deal with him. The heaven-punishing corpse god's heart skipped a beat. He said sullenly, Qitian, I did not play any tricks with you. I have always been a straightforward person and admire your strength. When we worked together, we always treated each other sincerely. I know that. Otherwise, I would not be telling you about this, Emperor Forsaken continued. Let me tell you one more thing. Where did the wound on my face come from? The heaven-punishing corpse god felt startled. It turned out that Qitian knew how this wound came about but was unwilling to tell the ghost monarch. If I guessed right, Shaoqin comprehended the legendary state of cycle. He can already reverse time and space, the past and the future, traveling through the cycle of cycles. Emperor Forsaken casually explained Shaoqian's ability. This fellow is a little too horrifying. The heaven-punishing corpse god thought about it and trembled in fear. Emperor Forsaken smiled and said, there is no need to be too nervous. The state of cycle is extremely difficult to cultivate. Furthermore, the state of cycle is not the state of time, after all. He has only grasped a little of it. Given our strength, it will not be difficult to break it. After saying that, Shaoqin told the heaven-punishing corpse god how to deal with this move. When the heaven-punishing corpse god heard that, he revealed an expression of understanding. At the same time, he felt somewhat fortunate that the Dongyue Ghost Emperor did not know about it yet. If the heaven-punishing corpse god ran into Shaoqian, he might suffer a great loss. With this thought, the heaven-punishing corpse god could not help marveling at the brilliance of Emperor Forsaken's methods. When necessary, he could use this to kill with a borrowed knife. However, that brat, Shaoqian, is very skilled at hiding himself. I'm afraid that even if we keep watching, we might not be able to find him. Emperor Forsaken revealed a worried expression and said, there is no need for you to ask too much about this. I have my ways of finding out where he is. The two's conversation ended. On the other side, the Dongyue Ghost Emperor had no idea that he had already aroused the God Emperor's vigilance. Hence, he was currently rushing to the ghost domain. Half a day later, the Ghost Emperor rushed to the Yellow Springs Hell at his fastest speed and met with the Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva again. After explaining his purpose, the Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva said, you have not done what you promised me. The Dongyue Ghost Emperor's face sank. He said coldly, do you think that Ingzongtian is that easy to deal with? How could I possibly think of a solution in 2 or 3 days? I will definitely do what I promised you. However, you have to help me. The Blue Dragon Palace concerns the secret of the Qing Emperor's rise. Shaoqian will be entering it soon. This is a rare opportunity. At the mention of the Qing Emperor, the Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva's expression changed slightly. He looked at the Dongyue Ghost Emperor and asked, who told you that? The Ghost Emperor smiled coldly in his heart. It looks like this old fellow was truly afraid of the Qing Emperor back then. Otherwise, the Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva would not have shown such an expression just because of a title. The Dongyue Ghost Emperor did not speak bluntly. If I do not obtain any benefits and Shao Qin becomes the second Qing emperor, your outcome will be the most miserable. You dare to threaten me? The Kittagarbha Bodhisattva snorted coldly when he heard this. Then, he exuded a Buddhist might. His eyes widened like the eyes of a Buddha, exuding might without being angry. The ghost emperor's heart sank. This Kittagarbha Bodhisattva's strength seemed to have improved significantly compared to half a year ago. It was hard to imagine how strong the Kittagarbha Bodhisattva was at his peak. It is not a threat. Right now, we are in the same boat. If I become stronger, it will be easier for me to help you refine the sins in Meteor Trail City. When the Kittagarbha Bodhisattva heard this, he scattered his Buddhist might and remained silent. After a long time, he finally made his decision. Alright, I promise you. How do you want me to help you? The Ghost Emperor revealed a smile on his face. I want you to come with me to the Blue Dragon Palace. At that time, you and I will work together, one in the open and one in the dark. After that, we will act according to the situation. Unless it is absolutely necessary, do not fall out with the God Sovereign. When the Kittagarbha Bodhisattva heard this, he hesitated for a long time. Right now, his strength had not recovered to its peak yet. He was not willing to get involved in this matter. The Kittagarbha Bodhisattva was very ambitious. He did not want to fall in the Blue Dragon Palace. If anything went wrong, he would regret it for life. The Kittagarbha Bodhisattva was not in a rush to agree. He changed the topic and said, let me ask you something. How strong is Shao Qin now? The Ghost Emperor answered honestly, he should be unrivaled under Prime. In a one-on-one fight with someone like the three Holy Masters, it would be very difficult to defeat him. Shao Qin received 3 palm strikes from the God Sovereign. Not only did he not die, but he even injured Emperor Forsaken. Alright, I promise you. Remember your promise. When the Kittagarbha Bodhisattva heard this, he quickly made his decision. This surprised the Ghost Emperor. However, after thinking about it, the Kittagarbha Bodhisattva understood. This Kittagarbha Bodhisattva was afraid that Shao Qin would become the second Qing emperor. How strong was the Qing emperor back then for the Kittagarbha Bodhisattva to fear him so? The secrets of the Blue Dragon Palace piqued the Kittagarbha Bodhisattva's interest. He was not willing to be someone else's subordinate and be at the mercy of Emperor Forsaken. It is settled, then. When Qitian sends news, I will head to the Blue Dragon Palace with you. Chapter 1485. On Heavenly Star Island, after Emperor Forsaken left, the other honored guests took their leave. After such a farce, Shao Qin was severely injured and was no longer fit to speak about the Tao. However, this farce allowed everyone to truly witness Shao Qin's strength. Before the primes left, they all more or less left behind their treasured medicinal pills for Shao Qin, expressing their concern and taking sides. However, Shao Qin was no longer in the mood to think about these minor matters. Emperor Forsaken's 3 palm strikes showed him the difference between himself and a prime. This was especially so for the final saber strike. Shao Qin reversed time and space, traveling to the past. In the end, this peak saber strike only left a tiny saber mark on Emperor Forsaken's face. Thinking about it, Shao Qin felt really sad. When he passed through, his body would be damaged. However, the result of summoning him back was a little unworthy of him. After the few Supremes checked Shao Qin's injuries one after another and found that there were no fatal injuries, they took their leave. Given Shao Qin's current cultivation, as long as it was not a fatal injury, he could recover quickly with the aid of miraculous medicinal pills and his physical body. There was no need to worry too much. All the primes had left. Only Ying Zongtian remained. Big brother Ying, there is no need to worry. I will recover after recuperating for a while, Shao Qin answered as he stood up. Ying Zongtian smiled and said, are you chasing me away? Originally, I came here intending to give you something. Now, it looks like I'll keep it for myself. What is it? Shao Qin could not help asking out of curiosity. The Martial God Medallion. The Martial God Medallion that the Thunder King gave me. It allows me to control the entire Bushin Palace, Ingzongtian said, enunciating every word with a serious expression. When Xiaochen heard that, he was stunned. The Dragon's Gate elders beside him were startled as well. Clearly, they had not expected Ingzongtian to hand the martial god medallion to Xiaochen. There is no need to worry. I already changed my mind. You are already under enough pressure. I'll give you some more pressure. If it's really not good, you should just focus on recuperating. I really didn't expect that big brother would think so highly of me, Xiaochen said with a wry smile, but I really don't have the heart to take charge of Bushin Palace. But if Bushin Palace needs me, I will be the first to rush over. Ingzongtian revealed a gratified expression. He nodded and said, you must have gained a lot from the battle with Emperor Forsaken. I will remain on Heavenly Star Island for this period of time. If you need anything, you can ask me anytime. Xiaochen's eyes lit up and a look of joy appeared on his face. Thank you, Big Brother Ing. After I recover from my injuries, I will definitely seek your guidance. Ha, alright, I'll be waiting. Ingzongtian laughed and agreed without hesitation. Exchanging blows with the current Xiaochen was exactly what he wanted. 3 days later. At the summit of the Dragon's Gates mountain, Xiaochen stood alone. Xiaochen managed to receive 3 palm strikes from Emperor Forsaken, even forcing the other party to make an oath. To others, this was an incredible matter, ruthlessly dampening Emperor Forsaken's spirit. However, to Xiaochen, it was indescribable bitterness in his heart. Xiaochen was very clear on the difference between him and Emperor Forsaken. Simply put, it was cultivation. The other party's cultivation was much higher than his. However, Xiaochen's cultivation remained stagnant, with no room for improvement. As long as the emperor's door of an emperor did not open, Xiaochen's cultivation could not improve. Xiaochen stood up and looked at the clouds around the summit. He muttered to himself, could it be that my cultivation will remain stagnant for the rest of my life, unable to improve? That was truly tragic. If his cultivation did not improve, he would not be a match for Emperor Forsaken even if he had another 100 years. That day, when he received the second palm from Emperor Forsaken, he already understood. His martial arts skills were no weaker than the other parties, and with sufficient cultivation, he could easily receive the attack. However, it was a pity that the other party used brute force to overcome his technique. No matter how he struggled, he was unable to dodge the palm strike. As for being able to receive the third palm strike, it was a complete fluke. At the last moment, the power of the Great Path burst forth with full force. Only then did he manage to break through the space and time in front of Emperor Forsaken. If he hadn't disrupted the other party's rhythm, the might of the third palm strike would have definitely killed him. Whoosh! An air-piercing sound rang out, and a person suddenly appeared beside him. Xiaochen didn't need to guess to know who this person was. Ingzongtian was the only one who could come to his side without making a sound and arouse his vigilance. Little brother Xiaochen, what's wrong? Are you still vexed about that battle? Ingzongtian said consolingly as he patted Xiaochen's shoulder with a smile on his face. Xiaochen nodded and sighed softly, I feel like I've reached a bottleneck. Furthermore, I can't see any hope of defeating Emperor Forsaken. Ingzongtian was not surprised. Many of the 9 Heaven Emperor Wu of the Kunlun realm would end up like Xiaochen if they could not break through to Prime. There was clearly a path ahead, but it was blocked. Their cultivation stopped, unable to advance. No matter how hard they tried, they could not advance. It was not because of themselves but because there were no more paths in the Kunlun realm. Even if one was one of those 1 in 10,000 cultivators, they would soon reach a bottleneck after advancing to Prime. This was the sorrow of all the cultivators of the Kunlun realm. This was an indescribable sorrow for all the cultivators born in the abandoned land. Now, you should understand what I said to you back then, right? Ingzongtian sighed as he withdrew his smile. Back then, when Ingzongtian learned of Xiaochen's identity, he immediately chose to stand behind Xiaochen. It was because Ingzongtian thought highly of Xiaochen and believed that he could surpass Prime. At that time, Ingzongtian was just like Xiaochen now, sad and helpless. I understand. Big Brother's words from back then are still fresh in my memory. Might I ask the heavens if there is a martial god after Prime? When Xiaoqin recalled the past, he felt somewhat rueful. Unexpectedly, in a few short years, he encountered the same problem as Ying Zongtian. Ying Zongtian revealed a grave expression on his handsome face. He sighed softly, martial god. That is so far away. Perhaps this martial god is just our imagination, looking at the sky from the bottom of a well, thinking that the world is only so big. Big Brother Ying, why the need to be so pessimistic? Xiaoqin consoled. Ying Zongtian smiled and said, let's not talk about this for now. Your injuries should have healed by now, right? I came here today to tell you that Emperor Forsaken is not as difficult to defeat as you think. The heaven-abandoning deity sovereign is not as hard to defeat as you imagine him to be. In reality, I do not wish for you to make him your target at all. Xiaoqin revealed a shocked expression. This was unexpected. Why? In that battle 3 days ago, you felt that you were in a sorry state. Actually, he was in an even worse state. He is just a pitiful worm. So what if he is the strongest person of the Kunlun realm? Once he leaves this abandoned land, he is nothing. Ying Zongtian revealed a mocking expression as he continued, don't set him as your target. He is just a coward who does not even dare to take the Kunlun road. The gap between you and him is not as big as you think. Xiaoqin smiled bitterly and said, however, right now, I cannot improve my cultivation at all. Ying Zongtian interrupted Xiaoqin and asked, how many strands of primordial energy do you think I have? Rumor has it that a prime has more than 10,000 strands of primordial energy. Ying Zongtian guffawed when he heard this. Nonsense. If I really have that many, do you think this body of mine can withstand it? When Xiaoqin heard this, he was stunned. He had not considered this question before. How strong would a physical body be if there was so much primordial energy gathered in one's body? Let me tell you. Like you, a prime only has 1,000 strands of primordial energy. Ying Zongtian continued, Emperor Wu of the 9 heavens only has 900 strands of primordial energy. However, you have 1,000 strands. The moment you jumped off the Emperor's road, the shackles on your body were already broken. Xiaoqin asked in confusion, in that case, why do I feel that the gap between my strength and Emperor Forsaken's has not changed? Could it be my misconception? It is not a misconception. It is real. Your state of cycle can support primordial energy. The great Tao that you comprehended can support primordial energy as well, increasing its might. Ying Zongtian crossed his arms and looked at Xiaoqin. However, have you ever considered that Emperor Forsaken's power of faith and will of holy light can also support primordial energy? When Xiaoqin heard this, he felt like he had been enlightened, and enlightened. Chapter 1486. Xiaoqin now understood. The gap between him and Emperor Forsaken was not in cultivation but in accumulations. The other party's cultivation of the power of faith and the will of holy light had already reached the limits. Every aspect had reached a level where they could no longer be improved. As for Xiaoqin's state of cycle and great Tao energy, he only scratched the surface. The might of his primordial energy could not compare to the other party's power of faith and the will of holy light. You understand now, right? The gap between you and Emperor Forsaken is not large. Defeating him is not difficult. However, do not make him your target. Your target should be set further. When Ying Zongtian saw the expression on Xiaoqin's face, he revealed a smile, knowing that Xiaoqin already understood. Actually, even if Xiaoqin knew, it would not solve much of the problem. The main thing was not to leave a shadow in Xiaoqin's heart. If a shadow was left behind and became a knot in Xiaoqin's heart, then it would truly be over. Ying Zongtian smiled and said, during this period, I will remain on this mountain. If you have anything you do not understand, you can ask me for guidance at any time. Xiaoqin performed a cupped fist salute and said, many thanks, big brother. You are welcome. Ying Zongtian smiled faintly. Then, his figure flashed, vanishing from where he was. After understanding the problem, Xiaochen now had a direction to work on. Great Tao energy and the state of cycle were rather difficult to improve. Hence, Xiaochen had to focus on other aspects that were easier to cultivate. Then, he would cultivate them to the peak. That way, he would be able to increase the might of his primordial energy as well. With the help of the Thunder Immortal Ancestor, the innate Thunder Crystal had already reached its peak. Xiaochen even comprehended the Thunder Domain. Raising it further would be very difficult. Only the Will of Ice remained at small perfection, with a lot of room for improvement. Xiaochen entered the Saber Sovereign Medallion and did his best to cultivate on the Ice Jade Bed in Panhuang Hall. This Ice Jade Bed had the same effect as the Lightning Pool, allowing one to quickly cultivate a certain will. Similarly, the pain of the cold was no less than the Lightning Pool. Boundless cold energy from the Ice Jade Bed seeped into Xiaochen's body. The Will of Ice in Xiaochen's sea of consciousness greedily absorbed this energy, quickly strengthening itself. Xiaochen's body shivered from the cold. He felt like his bones were completely frozen. For the first time, he lasted for half a day before he stopped. However, the second time, Xiaochen persisted for a week. By the time he came out, he had already become a popsicle. Kacha! The instant he shattered the ice, his bones made cracking sounds, almost shattering. That feeling was like being bitten by 10,000 insects. After tasting it once, he did not want to try it a second time. However, Xiaochen still had to continue. He had only cultivated the Will of Ice to great perfection, not even to peak consummation. He was still far from cultivating the innate lightning crystal, so he could not afford to give up on it. Just like that, Xiaochen persisted in cultivating in the Saber Sovereign Medallion for 2 months. When he came out, he had finally cultivated the Will of Ice to peak consummation. Just like that, Xiaochen persisted in cultivating in the Saber Sovereign Medallion for 2 months. When he came out, he had finally cultivated the Will of Ice to peak consummation. With a casual wave, the cold chi merged with the primordial energy and shot into the air. Space immediately froze. In the next moment, it shattered into countless pieces. Not bad. You comprehended it rather quickly. The destructive power of your primordial energy has improved by 10% compared to 2 months ago. Ying Zongtian seemed to have been there all along. When he saw Xiaochen open his eyes, he immediately came out. 10%. With his cultivation at a standstill, Xiaochen was able to raise the might of his primordial energy by 10% in 2 months. This far surpassed Xiaochen's expectations. Xiaochen stood up and looked at Ying Zongtian. A fighting spirit appeared in his eyes. Big brother, I would like to seek advice from you. Ha! I have been waiting for you to say that for a long time. Ying Zongtian's fighting spirit blazed as well. He laughed boldly and said, remember to use your full power and not hold back. I will definitely not hold back. Of course. When facing Ying Zongtian, Xiaochen had no choice but to use his full power. Otherwise, he might end up getting beaten up. Whoosh! A light flashed, and Xiaochen made the first move. Great Tao energy, innate thunder crystal, Will of Ice, and the state of cycle infused his primordial energy at the same time. Xiaochen casually threw a palm strike. Ying Zongtian smiled faintly, and the light of the sun burst forth behind him as he countered with a palm strike as well. Boom! The 2 palms clashed. The two's clothes fluttered wildly, and their long hair fluttered. Unexpectedly, they were evenly matched. The power of this palm strike swept away all the clouds in the sky. When one looked up, one could see the starry sky. Whoosh! 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 The two quickly exchanged moves, flying higher and higher. Soon, they broke through the barrier of the sky and arrived among the stars in the universe. After 100 moves, the two each stood on an asteroid and faced each other from a distance. Big brother, this is the end of the probing. Receive my saber strike. Void-breaking stance. The 7 deadly sins merged into one. As Xiaochen held his divine weapon, he instantly executed the first move of the flawless saber technique. A light flashed in the starry heavens, and Xiaochen vanished. In the next moment, light burst forth. A saber light appeared in front of Yingzongtian. Yingzongtian smiled faintly, and a beam of light shot out from his palm. Then, a sun appeared. With a wave of his hand, Xiaochen charged forward. Boom! This palm strike directly knocked back the void-breaking stance in the starry heavens. Xiaochen spun in the air and swung his saber in a reverse grip, executing the flawless saber technique's second move, the dragon subduing stance. Saber light flashed as the flawless saber technique executed consecutively. When Yingzongtian received the fifth move, he found it somewhat difficult. Receive my palm strike as well. Light of the sun. Yingzongtian switched from defense to offense. He sent out a palm strike, and his body released a light comparable to the sun, looking incredibly dazzling in the starry heavens. Fireballs as bright as the sun flew out of Yingzongtian's palm, surging towards Xiaochen. Xiaochen's heart sank. He had seen Yingzongtian use this move on the heaven-punishing corpse god before. It was incredibly horrifying, one of Yingzongtian's killing moves. Flawless saber technique, heaven-swallowing stance. Xiaochen executed the strongest move of the flawless saber technique. As he held gluttony, he materialized the flawless saber technique's ultimate Tao, death. The fusion of gluttony and the death throne represented the end and silence. This was especially so for the materialized heaven-swallowing stance, which could swallow up all martial techniques. When the saber light landed, a huge void beast appeared behind Xiaochen. Then, it opened its mouth and swallowed up all the suns. Buzz! 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 The saber trembled continuously. The energy of the 1,000 suns made the heaven-swallowing stance hard to digest. Xiaochen found it hard to keep his grip on the saber, it looked like it would crumble at any moment. Whoosh! A light flashed, and Yingzongtian appeared before Xiaochen. Then, he threw a palm strike and knocked away the divine weapon in Xiaochen's hand. A huge explosion rang out as 1,000 suns exploded in the starry sky, blasting a small star into nothingness. You lost. Yingzongtian smiled faintly and stopped moving, no longer attacking. This battle had been very enjoyable. However, in the end, Xiaochen had indeed lost. Xiaochen's primordial energy was already no weaker than Yingzongtian's. However, he could not maintain it for long. First, he drained his great Tao energy, then his state of cycle. Only the innate thunder crystal and the will of ice remained to support his primordial energy. With such energy, when Xiaochen executed the final move of the flawless saber technique, he could not break Yingzongtian's light of the sun. If not for Yingzongtian reacting quickly and knocking away the divine weapon, Xiaochen would have been injured by the explosion. Although I lost this battle, I benefited greatly. Big brother Ying, many thanks, Xiaochen said sincerely. Yingzongtian smiled faintly and said, we are family. There is no need to be so polite. When the two returned to Heavenly Star Island, they discovered that Mo Chen had already been waiting for them at the summit of the Dragon's Gate. Mo Chen, you waited for me for so long. Is something the matter? Xiaochen asked. Mo Chen smiled faintly and said, I still remember what Big Brother Xiao said the last time. In the past few days, I searched through ancient texts and visited many holy lands to borrow information. Finally, I know what can eliminate the sin in Meteor Trail City. What is it? Xiaochen asked quickly, rejoicing in his heart. When Yingzongtian heard that, he felt excited as well. He smiled and said, Miss Mo, you are truly incredible. Even I am helpless against such a difficult problem. Mo Chen smiled humbly and said, there is a kind of flame in the world that can burn everything, even sin. Are you talking about the heavenly flame? Yingzongtian asked. Mo Chen nodded and said, yes, it is. However, this heavenly flame has not appeared for 10,000 years already. I do not know where to find it. Yingzongtian frowned and said, this is difficult. The heavenly flame disappeared long ago. No one knows where it is. I know. Xiao Chen revealed a complicated expression. The moment he said that, Mo Chen and Ing Zongtian felt shocked. Chapter 1487. When Ing Zongtian saw Xiao Chen's complicated expression, he asked, "Is there anything strange about that place?" Xiao Chen smiled bitterly and said, "There is nothing strange about it. It is just that there are too many people watching it. Originally, I planned to go there after I became stronger." What place? Mo Chen could not help asking out of curiosity. The Blue Dragon Palace. At the mention of the Blue Dragon Palace, Missouri Chen was still fine. However, Ing Zongtian's expression clearly changed. We really have to think about this at length. We cannot advance rashly. Once the Blue Dragon Palace moves, it will attract a lot of trouble. Xiao Chen entered deep thought as he paced around. After a while, he said, "No matter how we think about it at length, there are only two results, to go or not to go. This Blue Dragon Palace is part of my plan. I have to go there in the first place." Mo Chen's words further affirm that I have to go to the Blue Dragon Palace. Although Ing Zongtian had some objections, it was not convenient for him to say anything. He said, "This is your own matter. Just think about it carefully. If you need my help, just say it." Xiao Chen thought for a while and said, "Actually, I've already been to this Blue Dragon Palace once. As long as I can enter it, there is nothing to worry about." This exceeded Ing Zongtian's expectations. Unexpectedly, Xiao Chen had already been there once. However, at that time, I was too weak. I only took a quick glance and could not examine it in detail. Furthermore, I could not enter the second layer. There are many mysteries that remain unsolved. Xiao Chen said honestly, "The heavenly flame's origin flame is sealed in the first layer. It is sealed with the blood of a deity race sovereign martial emperor." Ing Zongtian understood. He entered deep thought and said, "No wonder. At that time, you were too weak. Naturally, you could not attract the attention of others. However, if you move now, you might attract the attention of the deity Dao Union." Xiao Chen looked into the distance and said softly, "That is not what I am most worried about. What I am worried about is whether I can obtain the recognition of the Blue Dragon Palace. If I can't, it will be hard to say." Although he possessed the Blue Dragon martial soul and was a descendant of the Qing Emperor, the Blue Dragon didn't belong to him. In fact, the Blue Dragon Palace did not belong to the Qing Emperor, Xiao Teng. The Blue Dragon Palace was the inheritance palace of the Blue Dragon clan. His background was much greater than that of Bushin Palace. However, in front of the Blue Dragon Palace, he was just an interviewee. With his current strength, he could face a supreme being and enter safely. However, if he didn't obtain the inheritance after entering, he would lose the opportunity and never be able to find it again. Suddenly, Mo Chen said, "Big brother Xiao, worrying about personal gains and losses is not like your style. Actually, you wanted to go long ago, didn't you? Worrying about personal gains and losses, that was right." No matter what, Xiao Chen's current situation was worrying about personal gains and losses. Mo Chen's judgment was very accurate. Xiao Chen had wanted to go long ago. However, he kept telling himself to wait until he was stronger. Xiao Chen kept dragging it out until now, yet he still could not make up his mind. "Go, big brother Xiao. I believe in you. In this world, no matter how well prepared you are, there will always be things you miss out on. Just follow your heart and bravely take the risk once." Mo Chen drummed up her courage and said somewhat nervously. After she finished speaking, she feared that Xiao Chen would blame her. After all, what she meant was that Xiao Chen was somewhat timid. This was not good. Who knew? Xiao Chen just smiled, not showing any intention of blaming Mo Chen. He said softly, "Indeed, you understand me as well as before. Go back first. I'll discuss this with Big Brother Ing." Mo Chen smiled and said, "Hee hee. Big brother Xiao overpraises me. I'll go back first, then." After Mo Chen left far away, Ing Zongtian asked, "What's wrong?" You've already made up your mind? Xiaochen nodded and said, Big brother, do you think I'm too crazy to go to the Blue Dragon Palace right now? Zongtian smiled and said, Crazy? Indeed, it is best to make complete preparations for such things, looking ahead and behind, considering all sorts of possibilities, making sure nothing goes wrong. However, I feel that that girl is right. The world is hard to predict, the universe unfathomable. No matter how well prepared you are, there will always be things you miss out on. You might as well take the risk to your heart's content. When Xiaochen heard that, he laughed loudly and said, Good. Big brother, will you go crazy with me this time? Gladly. After Mo Chen reminded him of something that he had not been able to make up his mind for many years, Xiaochen immediately made a decision. While it looked rash, in reality, it was not rash at all. It was passion and hot-bloodedness. Even though one held a high position, one could do something hot-blooded and crazy without hesitation. Outside Heavenly Star Island, Emperor Forsaken, who had been waiting for a long time, suddenly opened his eyes. Xiaochen is making his move. The heaven-punishing corpse god revealed an excited expression. This fellow is finally making his move. I thought that he would not go. Qitian, what should we do now? At the same time, the heaven-punishing corpse god had some doubts in his heart. How could Emperor Forsaken be so sure that Xiaochen had already gone out? Seemingly noticing the heaven-punishing corpse god's doubts, Emperor Forsaken said indifferently, Back then, I left a weak mental energy mark in his body for the third palm strike. Given his strength, he will not be able to detect it. The heaven-punishing corpse god smiled and said, Excellent. The deity sovereign truly lives up to his name. His preparations are so thorough. Emperor Forsaken's expression turned grave as he said, Right now, the crucial thing is that we can get him to open the palace doors but absolutely cannot let him enter. That will be very difficult. The Fox King and Zongtian will definitely be helping from the side. It will be difficult to make a move. The heaven-punishing corpse god frowned slightly. Emperor Forsaken smiled coldly and said, Don't worry. I made preparations long ago. When the time comes, I will invite the deity race ancestor to kill him the instant he opens the palace doors. The deity race ancestor. The heaven-punishing corpse god was startled when he heard that. The deity race ancestor was that strange existence that surpassed Prime? How ruthless. The heaven-abandoning deity sovereign really put everything on the line. Let's go, Emperor Forsaken said indifferently. Then, he quickly led the heaven-punishing corpse god away, Emperor Forsaken said indifferently. At the same time, in the Yellow Springs Road, the Dongyue Ghost Emperor received the news. After making preparations with the Kitagarbha Bodhisattva, they rushed to the savage battlefield. In the heavenly starry ocean, Yi Ling quickly entered the secret room where the treasure master was. Father, I received news that Xiaochen and Zongtian appeared at the Central Province's Bushin Palace's transportation formation at the same time. They are currently rushing to the savage battlefield. Yi Ling quickly reported, unable to contain the excitement in his heart. This was something that the treasure master had instructed Yi Ling long ago. As long as Xiaochen appeared at the Bushin Palace, he was to immediately inform Yi Ling. The treasure master nodded indifferently and said, I got it. You may withdraw. I got it. Yi Ling withdrew, feeling somewhat confused. He did not know why his father did not show any excitement over this matter. This was an opportunity that he had been waiting for a long time. After Yi Ling withdrew, the treasure master held the puppet pearl with a calm expression. No one knew what he was thinking. No one knew what the treasure master's plan was, much less what kind of storm he would stir up. While everyone schemed, Xiaochen and Zongtian waited for the master of the Fiend Domain, the Fox King, to arrive at the savage battlefield. Haotian, why did you look for me so urgently? The Fox King asked, feeling somewhat suspicious, not knowing what Xiaochen had decided. Zongtian smiled and said, It is not me who is looking for you. It is Xiaochen who has a request. He wants to enter the Blue Dragon Palace and wants us to protect him. The Fox King's expression changed. You've decided? Xiaochen nodded and said, "Big brothers, please help me one last time. I believe that my whereabouts are already exposed. The deity Dao Union should be rushing over soon." The Fox King's expression turned grave as he said, "Don't worry. I will do my best. As long as I can enter the palace, everything will be fine. No matter how powerful Emperor Forsaken is, he will not be able to do anything to me." Xiaochen was confident that as long as he could enter, the item spirit of the Blue Dragon Palace would be able to protect him. Good. In that case, let's make good use of our time and try to enter the Blue Dragon Palace before the deity Dao Union. The three entered the savage battlefield, moving as fast as lightning, heading for the Blue Dragon Palace. For some reason, the savage battlefield was strangely quiet. The ferocious beasts there seemed to sense a strange atmosphere. The savage battlefield was very big. However, to primes, this distance was nothing. In merely 15 minutes, the three arrived at the periphery of the Blue Dragon Palace. Then, they saw the Azure Palace surrounded by 5 peaks. The 5 peaks each represented an attribute. They formed the 5-element absolute ceiling formation, trapping the Blue Dragon Palace and preventing primes from entering. One of them had been chopped in half. That had been chopped down by the Thunder Emperor back then. "Xiaochen, you are finally here. I have been waiting for you for 1 year." Just at this moment, a figure suddenly walked out of that half-broken peak. As he stood at the edge, he smiled faintly at Xiaochen's group. Chapter 1488. This person had a sword on his back and was dressed in black. It was Chu Chaoyun, who had not shown himself for a long time. After Chu Chaoyun dealt with the matters of the Sky Dome realm, he had come here. It had indeed been almost a year. "Who are you?" Ing Zongtian and the Fox King did not recognize Chu Chaoyun. Their faces sank, and their killing chi enveloped Chu Chaoyun. Chu Chaoyun smiled faintly. He did not panic when facing the pressure of 2 primes. He said calmly, "I am Chu Chaoyun. Like Xiaochen, I am from the Sky Dome realm. There is no need to be nervous. He has demonic chi on him." The Fox King whispered, not relaxing. Ing Zongtian frowned and said, "Xiaochen, you know him." The 2 primes did not have any good impression of the people of the demonic world. Xiaochen was somewhat surprised. It was not because of Chu Chaoyun's appearance. He was just surprised that the other party was waiting here so casually. Xiaochen had thought of many possibilities, including how Chu Chaoyun would appear. Unexpectedly, Chu Chaoyun would appear in such a manner. This was truly unexpected. Facing Ing Zongtian's question, Xiaochen felt conflicted. He did not know how to answer. After thinking for a while, Xiaochen answered honestly, "I do. He is the Tianwu Emperor's descendant. He should be waiting here for the Heavenly Flame's origin flame. In that case, he is an enemy." Compared to Xiaochen's hesitation, Ing Zongtian was incredibly decisive. A murderous intent flashed in his eyes. A murderous intent flashed in his eyes as he waved his hand and ruthlessly smashed his palm at Chu Chaoyun. A large sun illuminated the surroundings. The might of the Haotian shook the surroundings. The sun that flew out of Xiaochen's palm arrived before Chu Chaoyun in the blink of an eye, trying to burn him to ashes and eliminate him as soon as possible. Xiao! A strand of golden light flew out of the sun. Following that, there was a loud sound. The blazing sun shattered into countless fireballs that scattered in all directions. Chu Chaoyun withdrew his hand and stood upright. He looked at Ing Zongtian and said, "The Kunlun realm's prime really has a bad temper. Even if those demon sovereigns of the demonic world saw me, they would not be so angry. How could it be so easy?" The Fox King and Ing Zongtian were both shocked. Since when did the Devil Realm have such a character? Despite his young age, he was so powerful that he could easily block Ing Zongtian's palm strike. In the distance, Emperor Forsaken and the heaven-punishing corpse god, who had arrived long ago, hid in an extremely well-hidden place. When they saw this scene, they frowned slightly. "Who is that kid?" Emperor Forsaken was puzzled. There was no such person in the plan. Whoosh! A figure appeared behind them. It was the Dongyue Ghost Emperor. Emperor Forsaken collected his doubts and asked casually, "Ghostly monarch, did you come alone?" The ghost monarch smiled calmly and said, "Naturally. Didn't you instruct me not to bring anyone else to prevent Xiaochen from noticing?" "Of course, I will do as you said." Emperor Forsaken laughed coldly in his heart, but his face showed no trace of it. "Very good. Later, the moment Xiaochen opens the door to the palace, you will be able to enter the palace. I'll leave the first person to you." The Dongyue Ghost Emperor cursed in his heart. This God Emperor really wants to make use of me. Fortunately, his decision is exactly what I want. Without batting an eyelid, he said, "Don't worry. I don't dare to say that I can kill Xiaochen. Stopping him from entering the Blue Dragon Temple is a sure thing." The heaven-punishing corpse god muttered to himself. It seemed like the ghostly emperor indeed had other intentions. However, he didn't know that the god sovereign had already seen through everything about him. Who knows, the ghostly emperor might have some trump cards. "I'll just take a look. I cannot completely trust anyone. I still have to act according to the situation and not be taken advantage of." The three giants of the deity Dao Union chatted cheerfully. However, they each had their own ulterior motives. On the other side, Chu Chaoyun, who had just received a palm strike from Ing Zongtian, saw that Ing Zongtian was about to make another move. He quickly said, "At this moment, don't attack me without distinguishing friend from foe. Be careful not to let others take advantage of you." "What do you mean?" the Fox King asked, feeling confused. "Could there be others here?" Chu Chaoyun raised his head and looked at the sky. Then, he looked down and said, "The mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. Although I did not discover anyone else, I'm sure that there are at least 4 people hiding in the dark, watching our every move." After saying that, Chu Chaoyun's gaze fell on Xiaochen. "These are just the people of the Kunlun realm. There might be people hiding in the demonic world as well." Xiaochen looked around. The surroundings were quiet. He sent out his spiritual sense but did not discover anything within 5,000 kilometers. However, Xiaochen knew that if a prime wanted to hide, he would not be able to discover them. It was just like if Xiaochen wanted to hide, the other party would not be able to discover him. His spiritual sense was not reliable. However, the current situation forced Xiaochen to stand in the open. He did not know who was hiding in the dark. Ing Zongtian sent a voice projection, "This person makes some sense. This matter concerns the Blue Dragon Palace. The people of the deity Dao Union would not come with great fanfare. Perhaps they are already hiding nearby." Xiaochen looked at Chu Chaoyun and said, "What do you want?" "Just say it, Chu Chaoyun." Chu Chaoyun shrugged and smiled bitterly. "Brother Xiao, don't overthink. I'm just waiting for you to open the door. This 5-element absolute sealing formation sensed your bloodline and your current strength. It should be ineffective against you." Naturally, Xiaochen did not believe that his purpose was that simple. After explaining things to Ing Zongtian and the Fox King, he calmly walked to the edge of the formation. The 5-element absolute sealing formation could change time and space, making it very unpredictable. Even a prime could not enter. In the dark, many pairs of eyes stared at Xiaochen, waiting for him to take a step forward. Without hesitating for long, Xiaochen clenched his teeth and stepped in. Whoosh! Suddenly, the space in the formation turned dark, completely dark. Only the space under Xiaochen's feet remained bright, looking exceptionally eye-catching in this dark space. Indeed, he is fine. Although many people had expected this miraculous scene, they could not help crying out in their hearts when they saw it for themselves. Xiaochen calmed himself and walked forward step by step. Everywhere he passed, light shone down. He left behind a clear path in the dark space, heading for the palace doors. Inside the formation, Xiaochen found it hard to remain calm. As he looked at the palace doors, all sorts of emotions welled up in his heart. The instant he pushed open the doors, the 5-element absolute sealing formation should deactivate automatically. At that time, what would await him? Who knew how many people within 5,000 kilometers would be hiding in the dark, staring at him? The greatest possibility was that the instant he pushed open the doors, he would be blasted into bits before he could even take a step forward. Whoosh! Whoosh! Suddenly, Ingzongtian and the Fox King soared into the air. One on the left and one on the right, they casually sandwiched Chu Chaoyun. Chu Chaoyun smiled calmly and said, "The two of you don't have to mind me so much. The instant I open the door, you will be busy enough." Seeing Xiaoqin so calm, Ingzongtian and the Fox King felt somewhat angry. However, they had to admit that what Xiaoqin said was true. The two were not very confident that they could block the various attacks on Xiaoqin the instant the doors opened. Before leaving, Ingzongtian suggested to Xiaoqin to invite the 3 primes of the heavenly starry ocean over as well. However, Xiaoqin sensed that the heavenly starry ocean was not calm. If all the primes left, something bad would happen. Hence, he did not inform these people. 10 steps, 9 steps, 8 steps, 7 steps, 6 steps, even though Xiaoqin did not walk very fast, he still approached step by step. Finally, he was only 1 step away from the palace doors. All he needed to do was raise his hand and push open the palace doors. At this moment, the surroundings turned even quieter. Rumble. At this moment, countless ferocious beasts suddenly went berserk. They fled into the distance, kicking up a cloud of dust. Birds blotted out the sun and sky in the sky, scattering in all directions. Clearly, some people could no longer hold back their killing chi and released it. These sharp ferocious beasts could no longer endure it. An instinctive fear drove them to leave this place. After the ferocious beasts left, the world turned even quieter. Even the wind stopped blowing. Whoosh! 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 Many gazes fixed on Xiaoqian's raised right hand. It looked like he was about to push open the palace doors. Ingzongtian, who was staring at Xiaoqian, looked to the left, and his expression changed dramatically. Chu Chaoyun had disappeared. What's going on? The Fox King and Ingzongtian exchanged glances, feeling that something was wrong. Chapter 1489. At this crucial moment, Chu Chaoyun suddenly vanished. The reason was not hard to explain. As Xiaoqin approached the palace doors step by step, the two naturally focused on Xiaoqin. They could not help but overlook Chu Chaoyun. This was not the important point. The important point was where exactly did Chu Chaoyun go? Xiaoqin, who was preparing to push open the palace doors, was unaware of the situation behind him. His hand was already on the door. Xiaoqin, don't open the door. Chu Chaoyun is gone. Ingzongtian's warning made Xiaoqian's expression change, and his heart sink. It's too late. Suddenly, a voice rang out behind Xiaoqian. Chu Chaoyun executed the state of primal chaos and stood on the 5-element absolute sealing formation in perfect condition. The flow of time and the changes in space did not seem to affect him. This was because he was primal chaos. No matter how much time passed, primal chaos would always be primal chaos. Before the world opened, there was only primal chaos. There was no time and no space. Chu Chaoyun comprehended the state of primal chaos. Although it was just a superficial understanding, it was sufficient for him to not fear the 5-element absolute sealing formation. Chu Chaoyun threw a palm strike and landed on Xiaoqian's shoulder. Just as he was about to withdraw his right hand, he was caught off guard. This force pushed the palace doors open. The ancient Blue Dragon Palace's doors appeared before everyone's eyes once again. A vast dragon might surged out. At this moment, the 5-element absolute sealing formation completely vanished. However, the force of Chu Chaoyun's palm strike did not injure Xiaoqian. Instead, it turned into a strong force. The instant the doors opened, Chu Chaoyun pushed Xiaoqian in. Xiaoqian turned his head and looked at Chu Chaoyun in confusion. He could not understand why the other party was helping him at this moment. Such a situation stunned Zongtian and the Fox King, not understanding what was going on. Naturally, the more depressed ones were the three giants of the deity Dao Union, especially Emperor Forsaken. He had calculated everything. He was just waiting for Xiao Chen to open the door and kill him. However, such a scene appeared before Xiao Chen's eyes. Suddenly, another person appeared and pushed him in. However, no matter what, the ghostly monarch, who had been preparing for a long time, had no choice but to unleash his furious sword strike. He had gathered all the primordial energy in his body and was waiting for the moment the door opened. If he didn't make a move, the backlash from his cultivation technique would be unbearable. Xiao. Almost at the same time that Xiaochen entered the Blue Dragon Palace, a dim light flashed and descended from the sky, stabbing at Chu Chaoyun. That was the full-power sword strike of the ghostly emperor. His original target was Xiao Chen, but now, it was Chu Chaoyun instead. Dang! Chu Chaoyun drew his sword and held it horizontally, blocking the other party's thrust. A loud metallic sound rang out. Clearly, Chu Chaoyun's strength was inferior to the other party's. Blood leaked out of a corner of his lips as he retreated a few steps, forced out of the palace doors. After forcing back Chu Chaoyun with one sword strike, the Dongyue Ghost Emperor quickly flew towards the palace doors. Bang! An invisible barrier in the palace doors directly ejected the Dongyue Ghost Emperor. Chu Chaoyun smiled faintly, as if he had expected this. He wiped the blood off his lips and quickly left this place. When Emperor Forsaken saw this scene from afar, his face turned sullen. Indeed, it was as he had guessed. Once Xiaochen entered the hall, no one else would be able to enter. As long as they killed Xiaochen the instant he pushed open the palace doors, the Qing Emperor's bloodline would disappear from this world, the Blue Dragon Palace would be open to outsiders. Only then would the Azure Dragon Palace open to outsiders. Otherwise, everything would be useless. Damn it! Emperor Forsaken raged in his heart. He had calculated everything. As long as Xiaochen pushed open the palace doors, the Dongyue Ghost Emperor's sword strike would force Xiaochen away first. Then, the celestial race's ancestor would appear and suppress Xiaochen with absolute strength. He would finish off Xiaochen with one strike, and the Qing Emperor's descendant would die. The Blue Dragon Palace would then be open to outsiders. However, he had missed out on such a person. At the crucial moment, the celestial race's ancestor would push Xiaochen away, and the celestial race's ancestor would appear. The most unexpected thing was that the celestial race's ancestor could actually move freely in the five-element absolute ceiling formation, unaffected by the flow of time. The most unexpected thing was that the celestial race's ancestor could move freely in the five-element absolute ceiling formation, unaffected by the flow of time. Qitian, what should we do? The heaven-punishing corpse god was anxious, but there was nothing he could do. He could only place his hopes on Emperor Forsaken. Gamble. A crazed look flashed in Emperor Forsaken's eyes. I place all my hopes on this Blue Dragon Palace. I absolutely cannot allow such an accident to happen. Emperor Forsaken's gaze swept around and landed on Zongtian and the Fox King. The crazed look in his eyes turned into overwhelming killing chi. What is he trying to do? The heaven-punishing corpse god's heart skipped a beat, intimidated by Emperor Forsaken's killing chi. Capture the Fox King and Zongtian. I want Xiaochen to obediently hand over all the secrets of the Blue Dragon Palace after he comes out. This, the heaven-punishing corpse god was stunned when he heard that. Capturing two primes was as difficult as ascending to heaven. It was true that the heaven-abandoning deity sovereign could defeat the two of them. However, capturing them alive was different from defeating them. Even if they could not win, they could still run. Furthermore, this was the Bushin Palace's territory. Is this appropriate? Humph. The Ghost Emperor is not as simple as you think. He will not be willing to fail just like this. Whoosh. Emperor Forsaken's figure flashed and landed in front of Zongtian and the Fox King. He hovered in the air and looked at the two with a cold expression. The Fox King smiled faintly. Qitian, you have calculated everything. You probably did not expect this to happen, right? However, Ingzongtian noticed something amiss. The heaven-punishing corpse god and the Dongyue ghost emperor appeared behind them, blocking their way. Emperor Forsaken, what are you trying to do? Ingzongtian asked coldly. I don't want to do anything. I just want to borrow the two of you. Surrender now, lest we end up harming our friendship, the heaven-abandoning deity sovereign said coldly. Ingzongtian said disdainfully, with just the three of you. Don't forget, this is the Bushin Palace's territory. Emperor Forsaken smiled. Don't worry. The experts of the Bushin Palace will be delayed by the three holy masters. You have no idea how much I have planned for this day. Kitagarbha Bodhisattva, what are you waiting for? Do you really want this old man to force you out personally? When the Dongyue ghost emperor heard this, his expression changed slightly. Could it be that Emperor Forsaken already knew that the Kitagarbha Bodhisattva was already rushing over? Amitba. You are truly worthy of being the strongest in the Kunlun realm. I thought no one would discover you. The Kitagarbha Bodhisattva said his Buddhist name and appeared. He surrounded the Fox King and Ingzongtian, blocking the last gap. At this moment, the expressions of Ingzongtian and the Fox King changed completely. 4 prime experts surrounded the two of them. Among them was the heaven-abandoning deity, whose strength far surpassed theirs, and the mysterious and unfathomable Kitagarbha Bodhisattva. God Emperor, I. The Ghost Emperor said, trying to explain himself. The heaven-abandoning deity waved his hand and said, speak less nonsense and put in more effort. Only by capturing these two can we force the Blue Dragon Palace's Xiaochen to submit obediently. Everything else is pointless. Ingzongtian stretched out his hand, and the martial god medallion appeared on his fingertip. It seemed like he was preparing to summon the clone that the Bushin Palace's founder left in the medallion. Emperor Forsaken smiled coldly and spread his hands. A crack opened in the sky. The strong aura of the deity race ancestor spread out from it, stifling everyone's breathing. When Ingzongtian saw this scene, he revealed an unresigned expression. He put away the martial god medallion and vanished. At least you are sensible. Emperor Forsaken waved his hand, and the crack closed. The deity race ancestor's aura vanished as well. I've already said it before. For this day, I have prepared much more than you. Just surrender and don't do anything pointless. Otherwise, don't blame me for being too ruthless. Ingzongtian's face sank. A resolve to cut off all means of retreat appeared in his heart. At worst, he would just die. He said coldly, Old man Qitian, you want me to surrender? Let me tell you this, that's impossible. A startling battle could break out at any moment. Far away, Xiaochen saw the 6 primes fighting each other. Fearing that the commotion would affect them, Chu Chaoyun retreated another 5,000 kilometers. With a complicated expression, he took out a messaging token. After activating the messaging token, a black image appeared. Chu Chaoyun said, it is as you expected. Emperor Forsaken has already gone crazy and is attacking Ingzongtian and the Fox King. How unfortunate. None of the primes of the heavenly starry ocean left. However, this is enough. After this, you no longer owe me anything. You can leave now. Right after Chu Chaoyun spoke, the mysterious image vanished, and the messaging token shattered into countless pieces. Chapter 1490. After Xiaochen entered the palace, he only took 2 steps. When he turned his head, he could no longer see the scenery outside the palace. The space inside the palace seemed to be a world of its own, isolated from the outside world. The first floor of the Blue Dragon Palace had not changed much. It was exactly the same as the last time he came. Although Xiaochen did not understand why Chu Chaoyun helped him avoid the most difficult step, since he was already here, he might as well take things as they came. However, since they were already here, they might as well take things as they came. Xiaochen quickly headed for the formation sealing the heavenly flame's origin flame. The formation laid with the deity race Emperor Wu's blood remained the same. The heavenly flame's origin flame was still here. Xiaochen relaxed slightly. However, after a while, his expression suddenly changed drastically. The transparent crystal at the core of the formation was empty. The heavenly flame's origin flame, which was originally in it, had vanished. What's going on? Why is the heavenly flame's origin flame gone? Xiaochen, who had always been calm, could not help exclaiming in shock when he paled. Whoosh! An old man appeared silently in front. Xiaochen looked up and saw that it was the item soul of the Blue Dragon Palace. Xiaochen immediately asked, "Where's the heavenly flame's origin flame?" The black-clad old man smiled faintly and consoled Xiaochen. "Calm down first. Don't panic. I'll tell you in detail." "How can I calm down?" "My master is here specifically for the heavenly flame's origin flame," Ao Jiao said angrily as she leaped out of the lunar shadow saber. When the old man saw Ao Jiao, his eyes lit up. A gentle smile appeared on his face. "So, it's you. Little girl, you have to thank me properly for today's opportunity. Don't be so fierce to this old man." "Humph. Who would thank you? You were very fierce to me the last time, sending me flying with one finger." Ao Jiao was someone who held a grudge. Even now, she still remembered what happened that day. By this time, Xiaochen had already calmed down. He stopped Ao Jiao and cupped his fists at the black-robed old man. "Junior was rash just now. I hope Senior won't mind. I just want to know where the heavenly fire origin has been taken." When the black-clad old man saw that Xiaochen had calmed down, he nodded slightly and said, "Don't worry. The heavenly flame's origin flame is still here. I just put it away." "Why?" "A year ago, someone barged into the Blue Dragon Hall without fear of the 5-element absolute sealing array. When I pushed the door open an inch, I lost control of the heavenly flame and almost flew out. It's him." After the black-clothed old man explained, Xiaochen immediately understood. Chu Chaoyun had actually done such a crazy thing a year ago. From the looks of it, Chu Chaoyun's desire for the origin of heavenly flame was far from being as calm as he appeared. "Who?" the black-clad old man asked, feeling confused. Xiaochen quickly told the old man about Chu Chaoyun's identity and origins. After the black-clad old man heard it, he revealed an expression of sudden understanding. "So, he is a descendant of the Tianwu Emperor. In that case, you have to be careful. 10,000 years is a cycle. Now that the agreement of 10,000 years is drawing near, don't lose to him." Xiaochen narrowed his eyes and asked, "Old sir, may I ask what exactly does it mean by a cycle every 10,000 years? When the 7 thrones merged, Chu Chaoyun had said the same thing in the scene of the future. Xiaochen was very curious about what exactly it meant by a cycle every 10,000 years. Before the first generation Tianwu Emperor left the Kunlun realm, he left behind a divine item. Every 10,000 years, the divine item will appear. After refining the divine item, one can leave this abandoned land. When Xiaochen heard this, he was startled. The first generation Tianwu Emperor was that incredible? The black-clad old man smiled and said, "Of course. He was not a person of the Kunlun realm in the first place. He came from a great realm outside. 10,000 years ago, the divine item appeared in the Sky Dome realm. The final Tianwu Emperor was preparing to refine the divine item. In the end, the Qing Emperor found out. After that, the Qing Emperor could not resist the temptation and killed him." Xiaochen felt excited. He had heard many stories about these two. Rumor had it that they were good friends. In the end, the Qing Emperor fought a huge battle with them for some reason. After that, the final Tianwu Emperor lost and died. The black-clad old man smiled and said, "How can that be possible?" The Qing Emperor killed him because the final Tianwu Emperor was too ambitious. He wanted to refine the 3,000 lower realms and swallow up the Kunlun realm and the deep abyss demonic world. He wanted to use the divine item to absorb all the luck of the entire abandoned land before leaving. It turned out that there was such a secret. Xiaochen entered deep thought and asked, why did he do that? Of course, it was to let his luck flourish. Even after leaving the abandoned land, he would be able to rise again and reach the peak. The black-clad old man said, the primes and martial emperors of this world are not worth mentioning in a true great world. They are nothing. Outside is an even vaster world with limitless possibilities. So, that was the case. If the final Tianwu emperor really managed to absorb all the luck of the abandoned land would really become a wasteland. The Qing emperor was not as unbearable as the rumors made him out to be. Xiaochen said, very well, let's get back to business. Give me the heavenly flame. I need it. It is very useful. The black-clad old man shook his head and said, I can't give it to you yet. You have not obtained the recognition of the Blue Dragon Palace yet. You cannot take anything away from here. Xiaochen revealed a bitter smile. It looked like he was thinking the same thing. He glanced around and looked at the entrance to the second floor. What do I have to do to obtain the recognition of the Blue Dragon Palace? The black-clad old man revealed an embarrassed expression and said, I'm not sure about that either, that can't be. Aren't you the item soul of the Blue Dragon Palace? How come you don't know? Ao Jiao exclaimed in shock. The black-clad old man smiled bitterly and said, truth be told, I used to be a servant of the Qing Emperor. After I died, the Qing Emperor took pity on me and merged my soul with his saber, becoming the item soul of his saber. Before the Qing Emperor left, he pleaded for mercy on my behalf, allowing me to attach myself to the Blue Dragon Palace. I am not the true core item soul of the Blue Dragon Palace. This Blue Dragon Palace is even more ancient than you imagine. It has many secrets. Back then, even the Qing Emperor did not manage to figure them out. The old man's words made Xiaochen's expression turn grave. After hearing the old man's words, he looked at the Blue Dragon Palace again. There was a strange feeling that made him doubtful. The black-clad old man whispered, back then, your strength was too low. I didn't let you go to the second floor because I didn't want you to be humiliated. The core item soul of the Blue Dragon Palace has a bad temper and is very strange. Little old man, can't I hear you if you keep your voice down? Since he has the bloodline of the Blue Dragon, I will naturally follow the rules. Whether he can succeed or not depends on his ability. Why should I humiliate him? Suddenly, a resonant and deep voice resounded in the vast Azure Dragon Palace. The tone of the voice was very high, and it contained a strong might. Xiaochen felt his eardrums buzzing and a little pain. The Blue Dragon martial soul in his body was trembling non-stop. The black-clad old man smiled bitterly and said, let's go. I will take you to the second floor to meet Brother Long. That is the true inheritance of the Blue Dragon Palace. Xiaochen nodded and followed the black-clad old man to the second floor with Ao Jiao. Senior, let me ask you something. Back then, after the Qing Emperor returned to the Kunlun realm, who dealt him the fatal blow, forcing him to flee to the Yellow Springs Hell? The black-clad old man trembled when he heard this. He paused for a moment before saying, how many years has it been? There is no need to look into it so clearly. Even the Qing Emperor forgave that person. Why are you so conflicted? After saying that, the black-clad old man fell silent. Clearly, he was not willing to mention that past. It looks like there is more to this than meets the eye, Xiaochen analyzed in his heart. However, this is not the time to pursue this. I have to obtain the acknowledgement of the Blue Dragon Palace first. I still don't know what happened to Big Brother Ing and the Fox King outside. I have to quickly obtain the inheritance of the Blue Dragon Palace. Xiaochen had a bad feeling about this, but he could not pinpoint it. Back then, he rejected Ing Zongtian's suggestion to not let the primes of the heavenly starry ocean follow him. Xiaochen relied on this premonition. As he thought this, he unknowingly passed through a large door and arrived on the second floor. The moment he looked up, he discovered a pair of large azure eyes containing a boundless dragon might staring at him. In the next moment, he discovered a humongous dragon head nearly sticking to his nose. Roar! The dragon's head opened wide, and a vast baleful aura spread out. Xiaoqun could not endure it and stumbled back a few steps. However, he did not fall. After he stabilized himself, his heart pounded heavily. Not bad. You have passed the first stage. You are qualified to take the test.